Story 1. My wife wanted to surprise me with a divorce, as she was cheating on me with her colleague. But I surprised her with something shocking. I, 38M, have been married to my wife, Sarah, 36F, for 12 years. We met during our sophomore year at State University, where I was studying computer science and she was majoring in marketing. It was a classic college romance. Late-night study sessions that turned into deep conversations about our dreams and ambitions. Weekend dates exploring the city, and the excitement of first love. Sarah was always the more outgoing of the two of us. She had a way of lighting up a room with her smile and making everyone feel at ease. I, on the other hand, was more reserved and focused on my studies, but somehow we balanced each other perfectly. She brought me out of my shell, and I helped ground her when she needed it. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a promising tech startup. The hours were long, and the work was demanding, but I was determined to make a name for myself in the industry. Sarah was incredibly supportive during this time. She took on various part-time jobs to help make ends meet while I focused on building my career. As the years went by, I steadily climbed the corporate ladder. Late nights at the office became the norm, and weekends were often spent catching up on work or attending networking events. Sarah was always there, cheering me on and managing our home life. She'd have a hot meal waiting when I got home, no matter how late it was, and she never complained about the long hours I was putting in. 5 years into my career, I was promoted to a senior management position. The increased salary allowed us to buy our dream home, a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb. We talked about starting a family, but we both agreed to wait until my career was more established. 2 years ago, at the age of 36, I was appointed CEO of the company. It was a dream come true, the result of years of hard work and sacrifice. Sarah organized a surprise party to celebrate, inviting all our friends and family. I remember looking at her that night, seeing the pride in her eyes, and feeling like the luckiest man alive. However, as I reached the peak of my career, I began to notice changes in Sarah. The bright spark in her eyes seemed to dim, and her usual enthusiastic support of my achievements became more subdued. One evening, over a dinner she had barely touched, she confessed that while she was proud of my success, she felt like she had lost herself in supporting my dreams. "I love you," she said, "but I need something for myself. I want to join the workforce to pursue my own ambitions." I was surprised but supportive. I had always seen Sarah as a capable and intelligent woman, and I thought she would thrive in a professional environment. I offered to help her find a position at my company, thinking it would be a good starting point for her career. Sarah was hesitant at first, worried about nepotism and wanting to prove herself on her own merits, but after discussing it further, we agreed that it would be a good opportunity for her to get her foot in the door. I made it clear to the HR department that Sarah should be treated like any other employee and not given special treatment because of our relationship. Sarah started as an entry-level marketing assistant about 2 years ago. From the beginning, she threw herself into the role with enthusiasm. She worked hard to learn the ropes and quickly became known for her creativity and attention to detail. I made sure to keep our work relationship professional, treating her like any other employee when we were in the office. Within a year, Sarah had proven herself to be an invaluable member of the marketing team. She was promoted to junior marketing manager based on her own merits, and I couldn't have been prouder. She was flourishing in her new role, coming home excited to tell me about her projects and ideas. For a while, everything seemed perfect. We were both successful in our careers, and our relationship felt stronger than ever. We would often discuss our work over dinner, bouncing ideas off each other and celebrating each other's successes. However, things started to change about 6 months ago. Sarah began staying late at the office more frequently, citing important projects and deadlines. At first, I didn't think much of it. I knew how demanding work could be, and I was glad to see her so dedicated to her job. But as the weeks went by, I noticed other changes. Sarah became more distant and distracted at home. She was constantly on her phone, guarding it closely and angling the screen away from me when I was nearby. When I asked about her day, her answers became vague and evasive. My suspicions grew when I overheard a phone conversation one evening. Sarah was in our home office, speaking in hushed tones. I heard her giggling and using pet names I'd never heard before. When I entered the room, she quickly ended the call and claimed it was a work-related discussion with a colleague. I tried to dismiss my doubts, telling myself I was being paranoid. Sarah and I had always had a strong, trusting relationship, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Last month, unable to ignore my suspicions any longer, I decided to do some digging. I knew it wasn't the most ethical thing to do, but I felt I had no choice. I asked a trusted friend in the IT department to discreetly check Sarah's work emails. I hated invading her privacy, but I needed to know the truth. What my friend found confirmed my worst fears. There were numerous flirtatious exchanges between Sarah and her colleague, Mark, 34M, who was also married. They had been working closely on a project for the past few months, and their emails had gradually evolved from professional to personal and then to explicitly romantic. I was devastated but decided to keep quiet and gather more information. I hired a private investigator to follow Sarah and Mark. The PI's reports were like a punch to the gut. Sarah and Mark had been meeting at a hotel near the office twice a week for the past 3 months. The PI provided photographic evidence of them entering and leaving the hotel together, looking intimate and comfortable with each other. But the worst was yet to come. The PI also discovered that Sarah had been meeting with a divorce lawyer. She was planning to serve me with divorce papers on my upcoming 39th birthday, which was just 2 weeks away. The woman I had loved and supported for over a decade was not only cheating on me but also planning to blindside me with a divorce on my birthday. I was in shock. I felt betrayed, angry, and profoundly hurt. I couldn't believe that Sarah, who had been by my side through thick and thin, could do this to me. I spent several sleepless nights trying to figure out what had gone wrong in our marriage and how I had missed the signs. After the initial shock wore off, I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let Sarah blindside me with divorce papers. I contacted a high-profile divorce lawyer and started preparing my own divorce papers. I made sure to document all the evidence of Sarah's affair and her secret meetings with her lawyer. My lawyer assured me that, with this evidence, Sarah wouldn't be entitled to much in the divorce settlement. As I worked with my lawyer to prepare the divorce papers, I also started planning how to confront Sarah. I knew I couldn't just let her continue her affair and go through with her plan to surprise me with divorce papers. I wanted her to feel the shock and humiliation that I had felt when I discovered her betrayal. That's when I came up with the idea of confronting her at my pre-birthday party at the office. I knew it might seem harsh or even unprofessional, but I felt like she deserved it after what she had done. I planned to expose her affair in front of our colleagues and serve her with divorce papers. Now, as I sit here writing this post, I'm questioning whether I'm going too far. Part of me feels justified in wanting to expose Sarah's deceit, but another part wonders if I should handle this more privately. So, Reddit, AITA for planning to expose my wife's affair and serve her divorce papers at my pre-birthday party? Update 1. The pre-birthday party was yesterday, and things didn't go exactly as planned, but I think I got my point across. In the week leading up to the party, I was a bundle of nerves. I spent countless hours going over the plan with my lawyer, making sure all the paperwork was in order and that I had copies of all the evidence. We discussed the potential legal ramifications of my planned actions, and my lawyer advised me on how to proceed without putting myself or the company at risk. I also had a long conversation with the head of our HR department. I explained the situation and got their input on how to handle the termination of Sarah and Mark's employment. We agreed that their affair and misuse of company time and resources were grounds for immediate dismissal. The HR team prepared the necessary paperwork and was on standby for the party. As the day of the party arrived, I felt a mix of dread and determination. The office was decorated with balloons and streamers, and there was a buzz of excitement among the employees. Everyone thought it was just a normal office celebration for my birthday. Sarah arrived at the party looking nervous. I now recognized the signs I had missed before. The way she avoided eye contact with me, the slight tremor in her hands as she accepted a glass of champagne. She thought she was just days away from serving me with divorce papers, unaware that I was about to turn the tables. As the party was in full swing, with people chatting and enjoying the catered food, I called for everyone's attention. The room gradually fell silent, all eyes turning to me. I took a deep breath and began my speech. Thank you all for coming to celebrate my birthday. I started, trying to keep my voice steady. Before we continue with the festivities, I have an important announcement to make. I paused, scanning the room. Sarah was standing near the back, a look of confusion on her face. It's come to my attention that 2 of our employees have been engaging in an inappropriate relationship that violates our company policies. I continued. The room was dead silent now, attention building in the air. Sarah and Mark, I said, looking directly at them, you both know what I'm talking about. Your affair has not only betrayed my trust as a husband, but also as your employer. You've used company time and resources to conduct your illicit relationship. Sarah's face drained of color. Mark, standing across the room, looked like he was about to be sick. Murmurs began to ripple through the crowd of employees. As of this moment, I declared, you're both terminated from your positions. The room erupted into gasps and whispers. Sarah took a step forward, her mouth opening as if to speak, but I held up my hand to stop her. But that's not all, I said, my voice growing quieter but still audible in the hushed room. Sarah, I know about your plan to serve me with divorce papers on my birthday. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to beat you to it. I walked over to where Sarah stood, frozen in shock. From my jacket pocket, I pulled out an envelope containing the divorce papers my lawyer had prepared. Happy early birthday to me, I said quietly, handing her the envelope. The room descended into chaos. Sarah burst into tears, crumpling to the floor with the envelope clutched in her hands. Mark tried to make a quick exit, but was stopped by security at the door. Other employees were talking loudly, some expressing shock, others disgust, and a few defending Sarah and Mark. I stood there for a moment watching the scene unfold. A part of me felt vindicated, seeing Sarah's carefully laid plans crumble around her. But another part felt hollow, realizing that this was truly the end of my marriage. As the commotion continued, I quietly slipped out of the party. On my way out, I nodded to the HR representatives who were moving in to handle the aftermath. I knew they would manage the situation professionally and ensure that all proper procedures were followed in terminating Sarah and Mark's employment. When I got home, my phone was buzzing nonstop with messages from coworkers. Some expressed their support and shock at what had happened. Others criticized me for handling a personal matter so publicly. A few messages were from people claiming they had suspected something was going on between Sarah and Mark but hadn't wanted to get involved. Sarah didn't come home that night. I sat alone in our house, the house we had bought together with dreams of starting a family, and tried to process everything that had happened. The satisfaction of exposing Sarah's betrayal was quickly fading, replaced by a deep sense of loss and uncertainty about the future. I know some people might think I went too far by exposing them at the office, but in that moment, I felt like I needed to regain some control over the situation. Sarah was planning to blindside me, and I couldn't let that happen. Still, as I sit here writing this update, I can't help but wonder if there was a better way to handle it. I'll keep you updated on what happens next. Right now, I'm just trying to process everything and figure out my next steps. The coming days and weeks are going to be challenging, but I'm determined to get through this and come out stronger on the other side. Update 2. It's been a week since the party, and a lot has happened. I'll try to break it down as clearly as possible. The day after the party, Sarah came home to collect some of her things. I was sitting in the living room when I heard her key in the lock. For a moment, I was transported back to happier times when the sound of her coming home filled me with joy. Now, it only brought a sense of dread. Sarah walked in, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Despite everything, a part of me wanted to comfort her, but I steeled myself against that impulse. "How could you do that to me?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You've ruined my career." I took a deep breath before responding. "How could I do that to you? How could you cheat on me and plan to blindside me with divorce papers on my birthday? I think the question is, how could you do this to me, Sarah?" She broke down then, collapsing onto the couch and sobbing. Between tears, she admitted to everything. The affair with Mark, the secret meetings with the divorce lawyer, the plan to serve me papers on my birthday. I felt so alone, so neglected, she cried. You were always focused on your career. When I started working at the company, I finally felt like I had a purpose. Mark. He made me feel valued, appreciated. I listened to her explanation, feeling a mix of anger, hurt, and a small twinge of guilt. Had I really been so neglectful? But I pushed that thought aside for the moment. If you were unhappy, you should have talked to me, I said. We could have gone to counseling, worked on our issues. Having an affair and planning a surprise divorce was not the answer. Sarah and I talked for hours, rehashing our marriage, the good times and the bad. In the end, though, we both knew there was no going back. Too much had been broken. Too much trust had been lost. Sarah left to stay with her sister, taking a suitcase of clothes and personal items. We agreed to communicate through our lawyers from that point on. Watching her walk out the door for the last time, I felt a finality that hadn't quite hit me before. Our marriage was truly over. The fallout at work has been significant. Many employees have expressed their support for me, praising me for taking a stand against workplace misconduct. However, some feel I handled the situation unprofessionally, arguing that I should have dealt with it privately rather than making a spectacle at a company event. The HR department has been working overtime to manage the situation and prevent any potential lawsuits. They've conducted interviews with employees who worked closely with Sarah and Mark to ensure there were no other policy violations we needed to be aware of. A few days after the party, I received a surprising email. It was from Mark's wife, Jessica. She had found out about the affair and wanted to meet with me. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe away from the office. Jessica was a petite woman with kind eyes that were clouded with pain. When we met, we sat in silence for a few moments, both of us unsure where to start. I'm sorry, I finally said. I know how much this must hurt. Jessica nodded, wiping away a tear. I suspected something was going on for a while, but I didn't want to believe it. When I confronted Mark after your party, he confessed to everything. We spent the next hour talking, sharing our experiences and the pain of betrayal. It was a difficult but cathartic conversation. We both felt blindsided by our spouse's actions, and it was comforting, in a way, to know that someone else understood exactly what I was going through. Jessica told me she had filed for divorce as well. I can't trust him anymore, she said, and I won't be second best in my own marriage. Before we parted, Jessica thanked me for exposing the affair. It hurts, she said, but I'd rather know the truth than live a lie. That conversation with Jessica was a turning point for me. It made me realize that I needed help to process everything that had happened. The next day, I started researching therapists and found one who specialized in dealing with infidelity and divorce. I've had a few sessions now, and it's been incredibly helpful to have someone to talk to who can offer an objective perspective. My therapist has been helping me work through my feelings of betrayal and anger, as well as examining my own role in the breakdown of my marriage. Through therapy, I've started to see that, while Sarah's actions were inexcusable, our marriage had problems long before her affair began. I had been so focused on my career that I had neglected our relationship. It doesn't justify what Sarah did, but it helps me understand how we got to this point. The divorce proceedings are moving forward. Sarah's lawyer reached out to try and negotiate a settlement, but my lawyer advised me to stick to our original plan. With the evidence we have of Sarah's affair and her attempt to blindside me with divorce papers, she isn't likely to get much in the settlement. I'm trying to focus on my work and my mental health right now. It's been a difficult time, but I'm determined to get through it. I've started reconnecting with old friends who I had lost touch with over the years, and I've even joined a support group for people going through divorce. Update 3. It's been about a month since my last update, and things have started to settle into a new normal. The divorce proceedings are well underway. As my lawyer predicted, Sarah doesn't have much of a case for a substantial settlement. The evidence of her affair and her plan to blindside me with divorce papers has worked in my favor. She's likely to walk away with very little beyond what she brought into the marriage. Sarah has been trying to paint herself as the victim in all of this. She's been telling friends and family that I was emotionally absent in our marriage and that she turned to Mark out of loneliness. Some people have bought into her story, but most of our mutual friends have seen through it. I've had to deal with some backlash at work. A few employees felt that I abused my position as CEO by firing Sarah and Mark so publicly. The board of directors called a meeting to discuss the incident. After reviewing all the evidence and hearing my side of the story, they concluded that my actions were justified, given the circumstances. However, they advised me to handle any future personal matters more discreetly. Mark has been trying to find a new job, but word of what happened has spread in our industry. He's having a tough time finding a position comparable to what he had at my company. On a personal note, I've continued with therapy, and it's been incredibly helpful. I've been working through my feelings of betrayal and anger. My therapist has also helped me see some of the ways I might have contributed to the breakdown of my marriage. While it doesn't excuse Sarah's actions, I realize now that I could have been more attentive and communicative. I've also started to reconnect with old hobbies that I had neglected over the years. I've joined a local hiking group and have been spending more time outdoors. It's been refreshing to focus on myself and my own interests for a change. Update 4, final update. It's been 6 months since my original post, and I'm here with my final update. The divorce was finalized last week. As expected, Sarah didn't get much in the settlement. She walked away with her personal belongings and a small amount of alimony for 1 year to help her get back on her feet. Sarah has moved to another city to start fresh. Last I heard, she's working at a small marketing firm. We haven't spoken directly since the divorce was finalized. Mark's life took a significant downturn. His wife divorced him and got primary custody of their kids. He struggled to find a job in our industry and eventually had to relocate to a different state for a lower-paying position. As for me, I'm doing better than I expected. The company has recovered from the scandal, and business is going well. I've implemented new policies to prevent similar situations from happening in the future. Personally, I've continued with therapy and have made a lot of progress in dealing with the trauma of Sarah's betrayal. I've learned a lot about myself and what I want in a relationship. I'm not ready to start dating yet, but I feel more confident about my future. I've maintained my new hobbies and have even started volunteering at a local animal shelter. It's been rewarding to focus on giving back to the community. Looking back, I don't regret exposing Sarah's affair at the office party. While it might have been dramatic, it allowed me to take control of the narrative and protect myself from her planned ambush. However, I've learned the importance of addressing relationship issues before they escalate to that point. Many of you have asked if I've forgiven Sarah. The truth is, I'm not there yet. I don't hate her anymore, but I'm not ready to forgive her completely. Maybe someday, but for now, I'm focused on healing and moving forward with my life. Thank you all for your support and advice throughout this journey. Your comments and messages have been a source of strength during some of my darkest moments. I'm closing this chapter of my life now, but I'm looking forward to what the future holds. I did what I felt was necessary to protect myself and my interests. I hope my story can serve as a cautionary tale about the importance of communication in relationships and the consequences of betrayal. This will be my last update. Thanks again, Reddit. Signing off for the last time. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. My best friend tried to attack and unalive me because he has feelings for my girlfriend of 5 years. So, me, 27M, and Mark, 26M, have been best friends since we were 16 years old. We bonded over both wanting the same career path. After years of struggling and tons of rejection, my career has finally been taking off this past year, while Mark's has not. I've spent so much time trying to help him this past year, trying to encourage and help him. We even lived together as roommates from ages 20 to 23 and shared everything. But about 6 months ago, his attitude towards me changed. He started making me the butt of his jokes, saying belittling and demeaning things. I was kind of a happy-go-lucky type of guy, and I just brushed it off. I thought he was just a little jealous and having a hard time, and was understanding of his situation. I get it. It's a harsh environment to want to work in, with tons of rejections and seeing your friends suddenly get the success you have always dreamt of. And then there is my ex-girlfriend, Emily, 26F. I thought we had the perfect relationship together. 5.5 years, good communication, good sex life. She stood by me all these rough years trying to get ahead in this career path. I'm also a big oversharer and love to talk to her about everything. We had no secrets and were very honest. So I thought, I always made an effort to keep the relationship fresh and fun. Date nights 1 to 2 a week, surprise her with gifts, trips, trying to do new things together. Cooking classes, dance classes. I just loved sharing experiences with her. Indulged in her hobbies. Made sure she knew she was my number one person. And I thought I felt the same from her. Even as my career took off, I made sure not to prioritize her any less, or any of my friends. I need a good work-life balance to feel happy. Last week, we were all at our friend's house, Tom and Katie, 27M and F, a house they recently bought. We were sitting in their yard drinking, along with Bill, 26M, and Jane, 27F. We have been a friend group for 7 years. So we are all drinking, and Mark gets drunk pretty quick. All night, he is taking these jabs at me and saying things. After 6 months of this, I just get enough and call him out, which ends in an argument. I end up thinking this all stems from his jealousy of my recent success, that it's not my fault he doesn't have the talent to make it, and mention all I've tried doing for him so he could get opportunities as well. Then he just attacks me. We shove each other a bit, but he manages to knock me down, kicks me in the ribs a couple of times, then he tries to stomp on my head. Luckily, he doesn't hit me full force. I feel the sole of his feet hit my cheek and slip off, but it was hard enough that my face is still swollen. Then he does it again, but I moved and just see as he'll land full force inches from my face. He could have broken my skull or worse, killed me had he landed on my head. Then the other guys get in between. I stand up and yell if he is crazy. He seems to be walking off, but he picks up a wooden plank. Tom and Katie are redoing the fence and building a shed in the garden. Then he lunges at me again and swings it towards my head. I kind of duck and put my hand up so he hits my elbow pretty hard. Again, he could have killed me 2 times in a matter of seconds. He almost hit Jane with the swing also. So all hell breaks loose, and Tom and Bill jump him and beat him up pretty bad, as they were just seeing red from what happened. The girls managed to get them off Mark, and they kind of realized what they did. It's just emotional chaos at this point, and we are all kind of in shock. Mark sits up and Emily sits with him, and there is a lot of blood in his face, but he didn't lose consciousness. Katie ends up driving Mark to the hospital and gets back in the morning. Mark had a broken nose and a slight concussion, and she dropped him off at his parents'. She said Mark didn't really talk to her, explain himself, or even apologize. None of us really slept that night, and honestly, after that, things are a bit blurry to me. Probably a mix of alcohol, shock, and adrenaline, and the worst night of my life. But it just got worse. You might have noticed I haven't mentioned Emily for a while. We are sitting around, and Tom says something like, Mark deserved worse than a broken nose for trying to kill me twice and almost hurting Jane. Then Emily, who has been quiet, suddenly snaps and defended Mark, saying he doesn't deserve any of this, and that he just has been having a hard time. Tom and Emily almost end up in a screaming match before Emily storms off. I follow her, thinking, okay, we are all in shock and sleep deprived, and plan to comfort her. I find her in the guest room crying. I tell her I understand and we are in shock and maybe we should just try to get some sleep. She doesn't even look at me, and suddenly I realized Mark and Emily were sitting next to each other the previous evening. Not the first time. When Mark was screaming at me, Emily was by his side, tugging at his arm, pleading him to take a walk with her and calm down. To Mark, not me. After Mark kicked me, stomped on me, swung a plank at me, her attention was still on calming him down while I laid down in pain. She didn't check on me. When the guys were beating Mark, she was screaming hysterically, trying to pull them off him. I don't even remember her asking me once if I was okay all night. So I asked her, "Are you cheating on me with Mark?" And she just starts crying hysterically and repeating she never intended for it to go this far. And I got my answer. And I just lose it and start yelling at her. What is going on? And how can she do this? The others come in, and the guys take me to another room and try to calm me down. Jane and Katie end up driving Emily to her parents, and Jane ends up staying with her as apparently they were worried about her. All the car ride she cried so much she couldn't speak. When they got to her parents, Jane and Emily's dad had to help her up the stairs and into bed as she barely stood up, as she was just in hysterics still, and the only thing she managed to say or scream, according to them, was that she had ruined everything. So Jane stayed as her parents were worried sick and never seen her like this. Jane and Katie told them what had happened with Mark and me, and it seemed to stem from Mark and Emily's affair. Then 5 days pass. I'm just in so much physical and emotional pain, just so angry and confused. My elbow has a fracture, got a couple of bruised ribs, and the right side of my face is swollen. The night is on repeat in my head. I sent Emily some texts asking for an explanation, but she didn't answer. Then this morning, I get a call from my former mother-in-law. My former in-laws are amazing people and have always been so kind to me and helped me through a lot these past years. She is very apologetic for her daughter and is very understanding. Then she says that Emily wants to see me and talk, and if I could come over, which I agreed to. I arrive and they say they will. I go outside and wait in their car to give us space. But because of the state Emily is in and they don't want to leave the premise, I walk in. When I see Emily, it's a roller coaster of emotion. Anger and bitterness. Then I felt sorry for her and just wanted to hug her. She looked awful, like a mental patient. Like she hadn't eaten, showered, or slept since that night. I just felt so bad seeing her like that and had to restrain myself not to run over and take her in my arms. So I just sat down facing her. She said I could ask her anything and she would be honest and kept repeating how sorry she is and that she has ruined everyone's life. I'm not going to go into too many details as this is long enough, but basically, a year ago, Mark confessed his love for Emily and has been very persistent since then. She said she made it clear it wasn't mutual. I asked why she didn't come to me. She said she didn't want to ruin our friendship and wanted to fix things. Then these last months, he has become more aggressive, asking her to leave me for him. I asked if anything had happened. She said they kissed twice. Mark initiated both times, but she stopped it, and they once cuddled over a movie that Mark tried to initiate sex, and then she left and set clear boundaries. I asked why she kept seeing him alone if he was constantly trying to kiss her and get her into bed. She said he always promised he wouldn't do it again. I asked why she didn't cut contact, why she kept answering his DMs, kept meeting him, giving him false hope and leading him on, if she liked his attention. Then she said the strangest thing, that she felt bad for him, felt sorry for him, felt protective of him like she was his big sister WTF and she needed to help him get over her. That she even set him up on a date with a friend which he sabotaged by being a dick to the girl. I asked her if she was stupid, if she was telling the truth. She did nothing but keep his hope and crush for her alive by giving him all her time. She started crying and doubled down on having a sister-brother relationship with him and wanting to fix everything and that he was just having a hard time and she wanted to help him to get on his feet again. But he kept getting more persistent and started talking about me in a bad way and that I didn't deserve her. She says she regrets everything and said she was just stupid and had ruined everything and dealt with everything in the worst way possible. But she did it in good faith, not realizing she was just making things worse. Then I ask her if she has had any contact with him since that night. And she takes this awkward pause before starting to bawl her eyes out and saying yes. That just destroyed me completely. Ruined me. This man, for over a year, tried to get with her, tried to kill me, and I wait 5 days for her to answer me, only for her mother to call me on her behalf and meanwhile she is texting with him. I couldn't answer. I just felt like hurting her. Not physically, but emotionally. So I decided to just get up and go. She pleads with me, offers to show me the texts, saying she just checked if he was okay. And then the discussion went to her telling him it's over and to stop contacting her. But for me, she made her choice. I was in the worst pain in my life these last 5 days because of them, and she still chooses to continue to talk to him while I was on my own. I walk out with her following me, pleading, and I'm not proud of this, but her mom and dad get out of the car and ask if everything is all right, and I just lose it. I yell that their daughter has ruined my life, how she could choose the man who tried to stomp on my face over me. I was so angry I couldn't even drive, so I just start walking away. I don't know for how long I was walking, but my ex-MIL drives next to me, tells me to get in, which I do, expecting him to yell at me or tell me off, but bless his heart, he just drives me home. We didn't talk all the way, but when he stopped outside of my place, he put his hand on my shoulder. I couldn't even look him in the face after what I said to them. Emily did text me screenshots of their texts, which seems to prove what she said, that she only checked if he was okay and then said she couldn't keep him in her life, that she would never forgive him for attacking me. She also sent more screenshots of their previous chats, mostly of her telling him to stop, that she didn't have feelings for him, and of her rejecting his advances. But as they have been talking for over a year, I guess she could cherry-pick parts of the conversations that look in her favor and leave other parts of texts out. I have not responded yet, and I don't think I ever will, and I will block her, but for some reason I just can't yet. Now I'm here, just getting this all out of me. I just feel so betrayed and angry and horrible. I want to hurt Emily and Mark so bad. Not in a violent way, just emotionally, make them feel the pain I'm feeling. And I know that's not a healthy way to feel or a healthy thing to do. So I hope just writing this out, even if no one reads this, will help me start to process what the hell has happened. How my life went from feeling perfect to feeling like I will never feel good again. I feel like this pain will never go away. How on earth can someone heal from this? I feel like I lost everything. The people I used to love with all my heart. I feel nothing but hatred for now. I know Emily said she didn't cheat and had sex, which I doubt because I'm not stupid. Even if they didn't have sex, she still betrayed me on so many levels, as did Mark. I don't think I will ever forgive them. I don't feel like I will ever get in a place where I would even consider trying to. So to anyone who has ever been through a betrayal like this from partners or friends or both, what is my next step? How can I do to begin the process to just stop thinking about this and just start trying to live my life again? Update. So I haven't felt the need to update until now because I kind of need advice again, or just reassurance on what to do, as so many have asked for an update on the whole situation. I will try, but going into too many details will make this far too long. The situation I need advice on is the bottom paragraphs. Sorry this is so long again. I didn't mean to, but when I started writing, I just felt that need to get everything on my mind out. Mark. Everybody told me to press charges. I don't know. Maybe many of you are Americans with too much belief in a justice system or have watched too many TV shows about lawyers. It doesn't work that way, at least not in my country. I talked to 2 lawyers and the outcome was I could press charges, but him going to jail is highly unlikely. The most likely outcome is that he has to pay for the trial and pay me a settlement. Might be a large fee, could be a small fee because I wasn't seriously hurt, no long-lasting damages. My friends could testify to the severity of his assault, but the judge will most likely rule by the damage that was done. He might get probation but not jail. So yeah, I could maybe ruin him financially, but then he could press charges against Tom and Bill, and there is a bigger possibility they would end up worse from that case than Mark for mine, as they did break his nose and give him a concussion, and with a decent lawyer he could make it out as having lasting physical effects from it. So this could become months up to years of dealing with this, and I just want this over with. His reputation has suffered. He lost some friends. Some said they would stay neutral. His older brother told me that he and his parents have expressed their disappointment in him but aren't disowning him. But his younger sister took it really hard. She used to joke that she considered me as her older brother at Mark's expense. Lighthearted jokes, not cruel. She also looked up to Emily, so she took it hard and has refused to talk to Mark. He did send me a long apology letter, but not once mentioned Emily, just his behavior towards me in the assault. It was sincere, but not heartfelt. He owned up to a lot of things but blamed others on his mental health. I have not responded and will not. Jane and Katie. Some of you, after I commented that they told me that Mark might have been abusive to Emily, that they might know more than they let on or were sticking by her. So I kind of played dumb, talking about how I couldn't believe I didn't see the signs. If they saw the signs. And yes, they knew about Mark kissing Emily but claimed they didn't know the extent of it. Just that Mark and Emily were spending time together, and Emily told them he kissed her, but she dealt with the problem. I didn't really believe that that was the only thing they knew, as Jane got very defensive when I confronted her more about this. That had a domino effect, as Tom got mad at her for keeping it a secret and what else she isn't telling him. In his mind, if she can keep a secret like that, what else can she keep secret about? So that it's caused some strain to their relationship. I'm staying out of it but told Tom not to get angry at her for my behalf. Katie did come to my home and asked to talk. She said she genuinely didn't know. She just kind of walked in on the kissing conversation, and Jane and Emily downplayed it later. When asking Jane, she told me Emily had dealt with it. She swears she took it as if she had told me, and she had no idea other than that what was going on. And I do believe her. She seemed very genuine and apologetic, unlike Jane. I don't hate Jane or resent her, but I'm disappointed and frustrated. So I've kind of been LC/NC with her these last weeks as I just feel no interest being around her, which has affected slightly my friendship with Tom as I've been hanging out with other people instead. Emily. So where to begin? Many of you said go no contact, but I know myself. It would have driven me insane not being able to get everything off my chest and find some sort of conclusion to what the hell happened. And one person messaged me saying that he was raised to face his problems in person, and that resonated better with me than going NC, though I plan to do that after meeting her again. I also had to apologize to her parents and get my car as it was still at their place. So 4 days after that incident, I called them, asked if I could come by, talk to them, and if they would let me speak with Emily again. They actually were relieved. Part of me thinks they thought I was planning to forgive her or something. So I went there. We talked. I apologized. They said they were disappointed and shocked at me yelling those hurtful things but understood that I was going through a lot of emotions and in a bad place. Then we hugged. Then they went outside again, and I went in the living room where Emily waited for me. She walked towards me with the saddest face I have seen and asked for a hug, but I said no and asked her to sit down to talk. I asked her to tell me everything again and asked if he was in any way abusive as Jane and Katie implied, and she gave me the same version as last time but with some additions. She said she didn't fully realize at the time. She just felt as this situation was her responsibility to fix, but the reason she couldn't do it or come clean was Mark. He threatened her with, was telling me himself, that they kissed, that they were in love, that she was cheating on me when she tried to cut communication with him. He said these things that she would ruin our relationship and the friendship between me and Mark, that I would believe him and not her. So she felt trapped, dealing with this on her own. I asked if he was physically abusive. She kind of hesitated and said not really, but on 2 occasions he did hurt her, not badly but to the point of pain. One time at an event we were all at together, he got her alone, asked her if she really didn't love him. She said no and to not do this there and tried to walk away. But he grabbed her wrists and wouldn't let go and dragged her closer to him and hurt her wrists. I remember that night, and I remember about halfway through Emily went quiet and distracted but told me she was just tired. The second time was similar, but they were alone, and he grabbed her bicep and squeezed, and she got bruises but I don't remember any bruises on her. I would have noticed and asked about them. Maybe she hid them. I also asked if it really wasn't sexual, that his intentions were obvious, and why she kept putting herself in that position. She just said she didn't know. She was being stupid, but they never had sex. I also asked why he had so much power over her that she, for a year, couldn't find the strength to just tell me. Why she believed I would trust his words, not her. Again, she said she didn't know, that she just kept making mistakes. I asked why she ignored me after Mark attacked me but not him. She just started crying and kept saying she didn't know why. She just thought our relationship was stronger than that, and we would bounce back, and she was worried what Mark would do. I said that was the reason that hurt me the most. She was too busy worrying about him and not about me. That to me, she chose him. She said she didn't choose him, but I stood firm on that. It felt like that. Then I explained how much she and they had hurt me. All the trust was gone and we were done, and I would go no contact with them. She asked if there is a point in the future we could be in each other's lives, and I said no. Doubt, but it was eating me away as there are so many things I doubt in her story. So I reached out to Sarah, 27F, Emily's best friend, and said that I was just destroyed and felt like nobody around me was telling the truth and begged her to just be honest. To my surprise, she answered. It appears she knew a lot, but Emily kept her out of the loop with many things. She knew about Mark. Said she told Emily to stop talking to him and tell me about his behavior. She knew about them kissing and that Emily regretted it and was the one who stopped it from going further. She told me that to begin with was that Emily felt validated. She used to like the dynamic in our relationship where I needed her support when my career was struggling and full of rejections. Not like I was constantly crying on her shoulder or relying on her money, but on many occasions she was my support system, the one who took it upon herself to cheer me up, hug me, cuddle, motivate me, make me believe in myself and keep going. And when my career took off, she felt that dynamic missing, but then Mark was in the position I was in, and she could give her support to him and feel that validation again. I was just baffled. Sarah said she was too when she told her. I asked if she felt validated by the sexual attraction from Mark. Sarah said Emily never really talked about that, but as a girl herself and knowing Emily for 20 years, she told me she suspected that that was a part of it too. Then I asked, as I've been fearing I might have been delusional about being a good boyfriend, if she ever talked bad about me. Maybe I did something to drive her into Mark's arms. Sarah said not really. That Emily always sounded very much in love and talked a lot about how happy she was, how I made her feel special, to the point Sarah was almost jealous on a few occasions. Emily did call me overbearing, clingy, and I would sometimes shut down and be selfish, but never anything worse than that. Since then, I kind of think Sarah has been flirting with me. She texts me every day, at first just things like how my day was or how I was feeling, then memes that are kind of sexual, but I have no interest in anything with her, so I guess I will have to shut that down. I don't want her thinking I'm leading her on. So I'm just trying to come to terms with all of this, trying to move on. And then about 8 to 9 days back, I get a text from Emily. I blocked her on all apps and social media. We always communicated with those but rarely with our phone numbers, so it genuinely slipped my mind, or maybe I subconsciously didn't. It just said, "How have you been?" Followed up with her saying she smiled and laughed again for the first time because of me and a photo of me on her TV and how proud she is of me and she looks forward to seeing my career progress. I work in the entertainment industry. My big break early last year was a job behind the scenes, which progressed to me getting in front of the camera. I'm by no means famous and just a little show, although growing in audience and popularity since we began. Not on the main channel or anything. I made the mistake of responding and we chatted for 2 days, not about us but about some political issues in the country. I kept my distance still. If she texted, I just waited until I was in the mood to answer or finished what I was doing first. Then she asked if I could find it in my heart to let her in my life again, if only in a small way in the future. I said I needed more time but unlikely. Told her I couldn't keep doing this for my mental health. Said goodbye and blocked her again. Thought this was over, but then last Friday night around midnight, I get a knock on my door, and lo and behold, there stood Emily, soaking wet in the rain, like some freaking scene in a movie. I asked what the hell she was doing here. She said she was out drinking and wanted to see me but got cold feet as soon as she left the taxi and stood by. They rode for 10 minutes but was too cold to wait for another taxi now. So I let her in, gave her some old sweatpants, t-shirt and hoodie of mine and gave her a bag to put her wet clothes in. So the story is her girlfriends peer pressured her to go on a girls' night out. But she didn't feel ready but went anyway. They are drinking and she gets her favorite cocktail. When we were together but went out on our own, we used to have this thing where we would message each other all night with funny things that happen, inside jokes about situations, or just send pics of our drinks. The fancier the better. We were that annoying couple, yes, always on our phone talking when separated, and she instinctively reached for her phone to send me a pic, but then realized she could never do that again and felt a wave of sadness. She drank some more and then after telling her friend she didn't want to meet or talk to men, they invited some guys over, told one of them Emily was single, and he was flirting and trying to get her attention, and her friends kept creating situations leaving them alone together, and she had enough. She also told me that the guy was boring, uninteresting, and pathetic and ugly. Emily rarely talks like this about people, which brings me to this point. I know sober Emily, tipsy drunk Emily, and drunk Emily. She seemed to be in the tipsy drunk state, but usually, she is very giggly and bubbly. Then now she was completely cold and distant, never looked me in the eye. A post to last when I met her where she looked at me with such sorrow, regret. She even almost talked in a monotone. Never have I seen this Emily. Like she was a different person. I was tired and just so weirded out. My mind went kind of blank. Then she just sat there, not saying a word. I went on the taxi app and ordered her another taxi, but after 15 minutes, the app said it was still searching for a taxi, so I thought, screw this, and offered to drive her home as I didn't think her staying over was a good idea and suspected that that was her agenda and I was calling out her bluff. But she just got her things and went to my car without any protest or saying anything in general. In the car, the mood was still so weird. She asked to choose the music. I said yes. She asked to hold my hand while we drive for one last time. Stupid me said yes. Then she just sat there and looked out the window, never looked at me. This attitude kind of disarmed me. My mind was blank, but in a lame attempt to lighten the mood, I joked about driving her back to her friends and maybe missed her pathetic was still there. She just shrugged, said she was done with men forever. All they did was abuse her trust, manipulate her emotions and goodwill, and put her in lose-lose situations. I don't know if that was a stab at me, Mark, or both. I asked her why she said that, and she shrugged again and said seriously. She also told me Mark sent her a letter asking her to move with him to another country, but she threw it out. Then we just drove in silence. When we approached her parents' home, I felt her squeeze my hand like she didn't want to let go. When I stopped the car, she said nothing, just went out, not even looking at me, and went inside. When I got back home, I, of course, found her underwear in my bathroom, but in a place beside the laundry basket where clothes would often fall into. My common sense says, of course, she left them on purpose. She knows that where clothes sometimes fall, but they do fall, so of course another thing for me to overthink and doubt about. And now I got her underwear and she's got my clothes, so a reason to see each other again anyway. I was just so confused and a little scared for Emily in this state. I even been thinking if she was on drugs that night. She was that unlike herself. Am even debating if I should ask Sarah about it, but I shouldn't put her in that position and pull a mark on her. Am also that naive that I unblocked Emily on everything because I genuinely thought she would reach out with an apology for showing up drunk at my place. The old Emily would have. I also noticed she changed her Instagram a lot, removed her bio, deleted almost every picture. She had this cute and quirky feed. She has 2 old pics of her, deleted all pics with other people in, and pics of me except one of us together from a holiday from 2 years ago that we both have declared as the most fun time in our lives. I felt like I was making a tiny progress, but now I can't stop thinking about her again. But the truth is that I really miss Emily so much. She really is a one-of-a-kind person. I've always realized how lucky I have been having her in my life, and as much as I've hated her and resented this past month, seeing her on Friday and remembering how she cried at her parents, I hate seeing her like this. It made me feel good or content thinking about her hurting from her decisions and destroying her life with Mark. I felt like she deserved it for making me hurt so much. Now I feel some resentment, but I just worry, and I'm afraid for her more now. I admit, when she squeezed my hand in the car, I get a tingle of like butterflies in my stomach thinking about it and our time together. Then I feel worried. I don't want her to self-destruct or feel bad or guilty for the rest of her life. We are only human, we make mistakes. I'm inclined to believe that Mark was abusive, which makes me actually want to press charges to punish him for what he did to Emily. And she felt stuck in dealing with this herself because of his threats and fear of losing everything. But then again, she did console him and not me when things came to a head. I keep going in circles and I feel her visit on Friday was a little manipulative, her showing up soaking wet, leaving her underwear, acting so weird. But then for a few minutes I feel like not caring about that, only having her in my life as a partner again. So I'm thinking in circles. Go no contact and try to be strong. Reaching out to her, have an honest, all-on-the-table talk. Maybe try to work on things and see if we can move forward, or just be the bigger man and meet her and end things in a way that, in some way, relieves her of her guilt so she won't beat herself down about this or regret her whole life, even if it means me lying or downplaying something, so at least I cannot worry about her. As you can see, fellow Redditors, I'm so very confused and clueless right now and hoping, like last time, someone will come along with an advice that will help me see the right way forward. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My husband caught me cheating with a school friend. Now he demands a DNA test and filed for divorce. My husband and I are both in our late 40s and have been married for more than 24 years. We have 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. To protect our privacy, I won't go into too much detail about us, just enough to explain the situation. For the first 16 years, we had a wonderful marriage. It was during that time that a brief, poorly thought-out affair from my past with an old boyfriend was revealed to my husband by the ex-wife of that old boyfriend. Let me try to explain things as best I can. About 7 years into my marriage, I attended my 15-year high school reunion, and my husband joined me. I was part of the alumni committee and returned home 6 days before the event. My daughters accompanied me, and my husband flew in to join us the night before the main event. He and I attended the reunion, and we all stayed with my parents. However, when I was without my husband, I reconnected with my first serious boyfriend, whom I'll refer to as Reed. Reed and I had inappropriate contact multiple times that week. At the time, Reed was also married with 2 children of his own. He claimed that his marriage was falling apart and that he was unhappy. In contrast, my marriage was loving and fulfilling. Reflecting back, I believe I did it to recapture some of the excitement from my youth. The years of being a mother and a homemaker in a secure marriage made me long for excitement and risk-taking. I despised myself for this. During those 3 days we spent together, we behaved as we did back in high school. But this time we were hiding our actions from our spouses as well as our parents. We ended things 2 days before the reunion, realizing what a huge mistake we had made. We swore to have no further contact and to go on with our lives as if it hadn't happened. The reunion went well, and I even introduced my husband to my old boyfriend and his wife. We all chatted for a while, and with those 2 men standing side by side, I couldn't believe I had cheated on my husband, who was the love of my life and my support. I felt incredibly guilty and terrible right then and there. I promised myself that I would never tell him because it would deeply hurt him, but I would make it up to him. For the next 9 years, our marriage was nearly as perfect as one could imagine. During that period, I felt a strong urge to do everything in my power to make him happy, and I did exactly that. I gave him my all and ensured there was some form of affection for me every day. I managed everything at home and took care of the children so when he returned from work, he could relax and enjoy his time with the family. The guilt I carried was, and still is, incredibly profound. However, I also found immense joy in being a devoted wife and mother to our children. In this time, we had 3 kids as I gave birth to a boy 8 years ago. My husband was overjoyed to have a son, and they formed a close bond from the day he was born. To be fair, my husband is an affectionate father and shows the same level of love for our daughters. Everything was going well for us until one day my husband arrived home from work early and said we needed to talk. I was concerned and thought something had gone wrong at his job. Instead, he told me he had spoken to my old boyfriend's ex-wife earlier that day. As soon as he mentioned their names, my heart started racing. I had difficulty breathing, and I felt lightheaded. He proceeded to explain that she had told him her husband confessed to an affair he and I had years ago. She mentioned that her husband had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of Parkinson's disease 6 years ago, and was now in an advanced stage. They had been divorced for 7 years, which I also didn't know. But she and her children still helped him with some tasks as his condition had worsened. Apparently, he was consumed by guilt and he finally confessed. She's remarried now, but she continued to assist her kids with his groceries and some basic errands as he didn't have anyone else to help. The affair was no longer significant, but she felt a moral obligation to inform my husband, believing he should be aware. I agree with her, but I wish she had contacted me first so I could have confessed instead of catching my husband and me off guard. I begged my husband for forgiveness, explaining that it was a long time ago and had no real impact on our relationship. I reminded him of our wonderful marriage and assured him that he and our children remain my top priority. Naturally, he was upset, hurt, and felt deeply disrespected. He became extremely angry, which was something I had never witnessed before. For the next hour, he used offensive language, including disrespectful terms to address me. I sat there crying, not uttering a word, as I believed every word he was saying. He had been nothing but a wonderful man to me and my entire family. Once he finished his outburst, he left in his truck without specifying his destination. An hour later, he called and told me he'd return in the evening. He instructed me to gather all the kids for a family meeting and to think about what I would tell them. I inquired about what he meant and pleaded with him not to make me do this, as we didn't want to burden our children. I expressed that I should be the only one suffering for this, but he insisted that they needed to know the truth about their mother. He told me not to say a word to them until he got home in the evening. I prepared dinner for the kids, but I couldn't eat much due to my nervousness. They asked where their dad was, and I informed them he'd return later as he was working. I then mentioned that he wanted to have a family meeting that night to discuss something. They inquired about why and at what time, and I told them to be ready at 8:30. I texted my husband to inform him that we were all set for 8:30 and also asked him to call me so we could go over what we were going to say. However, he didn't call. Instead, he arrived promptly at 8:30 and entered the kitchen where we were all seated. His demeanor was notably different. He was no longer angry. Instead, he was cheerful, giving each of our kids a kiss and a hug as usual. He sat down, looked at me, and asked if I wanted to start. I attempted to speak but couldn't. Tearfully, I said I couldn't do it. He then proceeded to explain to the kids in simple terms what I had done. My daughters began to cry and express anger, while my 8-year-old son looked bewildered and frightened. My daughters asked when this had all happened, and I told them it occurred years ago and I couldn't recall the exact year. My son, with a fearful expression and tears in his eyes, asked his dad if he was going to leave us. Hearing this, I began to sob, uncertain about what my husband would say. Thankfully, he assured our son that he wasn't leaving but mentioned that he would be sleeping in the spare twin bed in his room for a while. He asked our son if that was okay, and our son eagerly replied, "Sure, Dad." My husband explained to the kids that things were going to be challenging for a while, and he wanted them to understand that things between us might not be quite the same for some time, if ever. He assured them that things in their world would remain unchanged and advised them to bring up any discomfort to us so we could address it promptly. Our marriage was never the same after that day, and it took nearly 13 months before we began to regain some sense of being husband and wife. It wasn't full intimacy, but he gradually allowed some forms of physical contact. This continued for the next 3 months, but only when he was in the mood. He wouldn't initiate anything with me, but I would push things as far as he permitted daily. Eventually, we did start sharing love again, but he couldn't do it while looking at me, and the tenderness wasn't the same as before. He explained that when he saw my face, he imagined my old boyfriend, which immediately killed his excitement. I didn't quite understand this, but my therapist mentioned that it's not uncommon. She said that for some men, this is a way to regain their masculinity that was compromised by the affair. While it might seem selfish and one-sided on his part, for me, it's a turn-on for some unknown reason, and I eagerly anticipate these moments. Nonetheless, I wish we could return to the way things used to be. My husband was so giving before and always made sure I was satisfied. Now he doesn't seem to care about my feelings, and I think he just uses me as a way to release his desires. He's told me that he won't do things for me like I do for him, if you catch my drift. To him, I somehow feel permanently tainted in that aspect. It's bizarre, I know, but that's how things have been for the last 3 years. I've grown accustomed to it and accepted it as our new normal. All things considered, everything was going pretty well between us until this past January. It was during this time that something that should have been an enjoyable exercise turned into something that set us back months in our healing process. The wounds from the past affair were reopened, and we found ourselves even further behind than we had been. It was then that my son came home and told his dad and me during dinner about a project his 8th grade history class was working on. The project involved mapping our family history in America as far back as possible. The teacher suggested that students could use reports from genetic testing companies, but it wasn't mandatory. He said his friends were planning to use them, and he wanted to do the same. My husband suggested that we should do it, mentioning it's something he's been interested in for a while. I smiled and agreed with them, and we finished dinner, spending the rest of the night watching a movie. My attention wasn't really on the movie, though, as my mind was occupied by something else. Something I knew could potentially jeopardize everything we had worked hard to rebuild up to that point. While I was quite certain that my husband was my son's biological father, there was a slim chance he might not be, given the timing of his conception during the alumni week when I had been with both men. I know what you're probably thinking, and I understand your perspective, but I want to be honest. After the movie, my son went to his room, and my husband and I began getting ready for bed. It was at that moment I asked my husband to sit down with me because I had something important to tell him. I then explained precisely when the affair took place and mentioned the slight possibility that our son might not be his biological child. He buried his face in his hands and then shot an angry glare at me. I wasn't sure what he would do next. He got up, packed a bag, took his shaving kit, and left. I asked him to stay and discuss it, but he just left. I didn't want to alarm my son about what was happening, so I let my husband leave without resistance. I called and sent him texts, but he didn't respond until the next morning when he called to say he was coming home to talk. I felt a sense of relief and believed we could work through this, given all that we had been through and the progress we had made. When he walked through the door, I grabbed him and asked him to look into my eyes. He hesitated, but I held him tightly, locking my arms around both his arms and his midsection. Eventually, he looked at me, somewhat frustrated, and I told him, "You are the only man I've ever loved." I said I was willing to do anything for him, and he knew that. Then I explained that I was 99% sure he was our son's biological father, and that I had only brought this up so he was aware of the slight risk. He asked if I was done, and then said, "Why didn't you tell me this 4 years ago when I found out about your affair? Or better yet, why didn't you tell me this 13 years ago, right after you had the affair? Or even better yet, why didn't you just not cheat with your old boyfriend and be a decent wife to me and a good mother to your children?" This broke me, and I cried, saying that I would change things if I could. But I couldn't. I could only control my actions from now on. He then explained what was going to happen next. He explained that the entire family would take ancestry tests, and if our son's test came back negative, he would be the one to tell him, then he would divorce me and I would give him full custody of our son. I agreed to this but told him I was confident that he was our son's father. I also asked if we could still share our bed and continue our relationship where we left off. He refused and said I would need to sleep on the pull-out couch in our bedroom for now. I was disappointed but accepted it, as at least he was still willing to share the same room with me. We all took the ancestry tests, and thankfully the results showed that my husband was indeed our son's father. After getting the results, my husband helped our son complete his class project. He told me he was relieved, and I thought things would return the way they had been, but they haven't. I'm still sleeping on the couch, and my husband has become distant. He only spends time with me when our son is present or when our daughters are home. He has also joined a local hiking club as the vice president, so most evenings after dinner, if he's not with our son, he's out hiking with the club or working with the board. This has been going on for nearly 4 months, and I'm feeling lonely and left out. I want my husband back, the one I used to have before he found out about my affair. Does anyone have any suggestions for what I could do in addition to what I'm already doing? As I mentioned earlier in this post, I've done everything I can think of for him, but I haven't been able to break through his emotional barriers. I know he'll never forget what I've done and may never forgive me, but I'm willing to accept that as long as we can get back to the love and mutual admiration we once had for each other. My feelings for him are stronger than ever, but I fear he has fallen out of love with me. Thank you for reading this and understanding my situation. Update. I'm back to quickly answer some common questions. First question. My old boyfriend and I dated during most of high school. I ended the relationship shortly after starting college because the long-distance thing wasn't working for us. Second question. I reconnected with him when I returned home, and that's how we got in touch. Each of us on the reunion committee had a list of names to call and confirm attendance, and I purposely chose the list with his name on it. You could say I initiated contact. At the time, I wanted what happened to happen, and after it did, I felt terrible guilt, which has made me a better person. Third question. My husband has never pressured me into anything. I've willingly done everything with him, and most of the time, I've taken the initiative. While I do wish he'd hold me and show me affection as he did before, I've accepted our new life and appreciate any attention he gives me when he's happy. I'm happy. Fourth question. My husband has never cheated on me. I'm certain of this because his focus has always been 100% on his family. He is a good man, an excellent father, and the best husband. Although our relationship has changed, I'm sure most women here would envy what I have and gladly trade places with me. Update 7 months after the original post. Hello everyone. I'm here to give you a quick update on the current status of my relationship with my husband. Sadly, my husband has decided that he wants a divorce. As I type this out, it fills me with sadness, sorrow, and regret. These have been my overwhelming feelings since he told me about his decision a month and a half ago. I did everything I could to try to change his mind, but he had already made up his decision. He explained that the past 5 years have been miserable for him, and he assumed they must have been tough for me as well. I told him I wasn't miserable and that simply being around him brought me joy. I begged him to reconsider, but it was clear that he had made up his mind. He expressed his desire to start a new life for himself, hoping I would do the same. He thanked me for the years before my unfaithfulness and for the effort I put into trying to salvage our marriage. Nevertheless, he said the affair, along with my dishonesty and lack of transparency, had damaged his ability to trust me completely. Beyond the affair, he acknowledged that I had been a great mother and he wanted us to remain close and be good parents after the divorce for the sake of our kids. We're working out the details outside of the courtroom, so the legal proceedings will be more of a formality. We have such a good relationship that his lawyer even questioned once whether we were sure about getting a divorce. I expressed my reluctance, but I respect my husband's decision. Everything should be finalized within the next year. One of the most challenging tasks will be selling the family home we built together, the place where we conceived and raised our children. While we'll both make a substantial amount from the sale, property prices in the area have increased so much that I wouldn't be able to afford a new one on my own. I'm currently searching for an apartment for my new place. My husband has similar plans but intends to buy a new place, possibly closer to his workplace. Our kids are handling it well, and my son has been incredibly supportive. He's truly a guardian angel. Having my son around has helped me through some really tough times. My daughters have been supportive too, but they're both busy with school and don't visit home that often. I'm planning to start job hunting later this year, but for now, I'm taking a couple of months off to focus on self-improvement. Over the past 5 years, the stress in my life has taken a toll on me, leading to some weight gain. My doctor has warned me about high blood pressure and my weight. I don't turn to alcohol, so I use food as a way to cope when I'm under stress. Unlike my husband, I don't exercise or eat healthily, which has caused me to gain quite a bit of weight, especially recently. My goal is to return to the weight I was when we first got married. In conclusion, I want to express my gratitude to everyone for the thoughtful responses and their concern for my well-being. I never thought my life was that interesting, but apparently it is. Please don't feel sorry for me. I'll be fine. The darkest days are behind me, and I'm moving towards a brighter future. Who knows, my husband might change his mind or return to me in the future or stay grateful. Alright, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in story 2. If I could offer one piece of advice regarding divorce, it would be not to pursue it under normal circumstances. In my case, there was no offense. We were together for 8 years, which were mostly good, and we have 4 children. Around the 5-year mark, I received a job promotion, and I started to believe that my ex-husband was somehow holding me back from more success and a better life. We didn't have much money, but with my promotion, I was now earning more than he was. I began working longer hours while his hours were reduced, so he spent more time at home. I started to resent him for being at home and for having the opportunity to spend time with our kids most evenings when I returned home. The children were either getting ready for bed or already asleep. After a few months in my new job, it became clear to me that things at home weren't going well when I wasn't there. Some nights the dishes weren't done when I arrived, or the kids hadn't eaten, and I would find something to be upset with him about, no matter how trivial. I was angry, and it didn't really matter what it was about. He kept saying he would try harder, but he also mentioned how difficult it was being home all the time. That just made me even more furious. Over the next couple of years, things continued to deteriorate. My work hours remained long, and his job was sporadically full-time. There was never a good time for him to work full-time given my schedule, but we needed the money. Whenever he mentioned that he could take on extra hours, I would complain. The fewer hours he worked, the more I would gripe that he wasn't earning enough money. If he pointed out the inconsistency, I would tell him to figure it out. I knew this bothered him, so I started saying it frequently, using it as an excuse for many things. I truly resented him, and I withdrew from the relationship. I understood that my actions hurt him, but I didn't care. I believed that if he wanted to avoid getting hurt, he should at least try to make me happy. I used this justification when I began talking to another man at work. Initially, I considered him just a friend, but our conversations at work turned into text messages at home. These messages then led to exchanging pictures and videos, and eventually we tried to find ways to spend time alone together. I knew it was wrong, but it made me feel alive, which my husband hadn't made me feel in years. I was weary of being unhappy, and I was doing this for myself. The worst moment was when I arrived home at a reasonable time and discovered that he had cleaned the entire house, prepared dinner for the family, and selected a movie for all of us to watch together. A couple of years earlier, this would have delighted me, but that night I couldn't even look at him, and I faked being sick. I spent the entire evening in bed while he waited on me, checked on me, and even brought me different food in bed. It made me feel awful, and then I became angry that he made me feel that way. By the end of the night, I was texting with the other guy. Over the next month or two from that night, it didn't matter what he did. He seemed wrong just for existing. Most days he would get so upset with how I treated him, and I would deliberately provoke him into losing his temper because I knew it would happen sooner or later. After most of our fights, he would apologize for something I told him he did wrong, if there even was anything, but I never did. Instead, I would often find a way to make him feel even worse. I believed I was right because he was wrong, and that was all that mattered to me. I even pretended not to care when he found out about my relationship with the guy from work. It pained me internally to see him holding back tears, but I wasn't going to let him see that. He was at his most vulnerable when I chose to tell him that I wanted a divorce. I could almost hear his heart breaking inside his chest. He pleaded and fought, saying we could work through it together. I wasn't really interested in fixing our marriage, but I mostly ended things with the other guy only because I knew I could go back to it if I wanted. I could see he was trying, and occasionally I would acknowledge that, but most of the time I was incredibly harsh to him for any and all reasons I could think of. I'm not sure what more the man could have done to make me happy aside from finding a job that paid enough for me not to have to work at all. He said he was looking, but looking and finding a job are two different things. It was around this time that I discovered this group and a few others. I started posting things about him solely from my perspective, and I received a lot of positive feedback about how I was feeling, which reinforced my belief that I was right. The more I posted, the more validation I received. It wasn't just me who believed that my ex-husband wasn't worth keeping around. The entire internet was telling me how terrible he was. I began saying terrible things to him and even outright ignoring him. I was so confident in my opinion and the opinions of others that I contacted a lawyer and within a couple of weeks had filed for divorce. I kept using this website and a couple of others to find validation for my feelings and get encouragement to go through with a divorce, and eventually, I went ahead with it. The process went relatively smoothly. My ex-husband didn't ask for much except not to get divorced and to try to work things out. I didn't care about that, though. He was shattered, but I felt liberated. I had the freedom to do as I pleased without feeling guilt or having to answer to anyone. It was an incredible sense of freedom. However, this feeling didn't last long. In the first month after he moved out, I missed garbage day 3 times. The dishes rarely got cleaned, and the laundry piled up for so long that I had to do the sniff test to see if it could be worn again. I also rarely saw my kids happy. My oldest had seen some messages from the other guy months earlier, and she knew my ex-husband still wanted to try to work things out. It didn't take her long to stop talking to me altogether, except to express her desire to go to my ex-husband's house. The other kids also told me they wanted to live with him. I tried to make them happy but ended up just buying them toys all the time, and the happiness was short-lived. I was also struggling at work. Being alone, I couldn't work all those extra hours that were expected of me. Eventually, I gave in and started calling my ex-husband to watch the kids. He always came over as soon as he could, asking if I needed anything. When I returned home, I'd find clean dishes, laundry done, and even dinner prepared at times. He didn't say much after I got back, just advised me to call him if I needed anything and left. He always looked so sad when it was time to go. Finally, after a couple of months, my friends convinced me to go on a date. It was for dinner and a movie, and I was initially excited and hopeful, but during dinner, an overwhelming sense of guilt started to consume me, and it got so bad that I didn't even make it to the movie. About a week later, after shedding countless tears, I found myself on a therapist's couch. I recounted everything that had transpired, starting with the work promotion. The therapist didn't agree with me or the encouragement I had received for the divorce. I ended up visiting her office 2 and sometimes 3 times a week. The more I talked to prove that I was right, the more I began to realize how wrong I had been. It was truly heart-wrenching. I'm not sure if I had ever cried as much in my whole life as I did in the first month in her office. After spending around $2,000 on therapy sessions, I came to realize that while my ex-husband had his faults, I had far worse flaws. I did so many terrible things and said awful things that I wouldn't want to be with me, yet he did. I still remember a moment when he asked me during a meeting with the lawyer not to proceed with the divorce. However, I went through with it, and later I boastfully shared on this platform how great it felt. I was completely wrong, and now I can see it. A couple of weeks ago, I approached him as he was leaving the house and asked about the possibility of getting back together. When he looked at me, his eyes welled up with tears, and a couple rolled down his cheeks. He explained that he didn't know if he could. He said that the pain had been too much for too long, and he feared that if we reunited, I might hurt him once again. He mentioned that he had always hoped I would realize how much he loved me up until the moment I signed the divorce papers, and he released an exaggerated sigh of relief. He confessed that this hurt him more than anything else, and that he wasn't sure if he could ever trust me again. I don't blame him. I essentially broke a man who, looking back, was a great husband. I deprived my children of having a wonderful father at home, and I took his children away from him. As for myself, the one who pushed for divorce in search of happiness and freedom, I now spend most of my free time either sitting at home or on a therapist's couch. Please don't solely rely on the advice of anyone on this website or any other regarding divorce. If your marriage is going through a rough patch, start by examining yourself and consider making changes. This advice is for both men and women. Divorce is not enjoyable, and life post-divorce is not a walk in the park. Witnessing your husband broken and your children perpetually unhappy due to your actions is one of the most painful experiences I can imagine. I wish all of you the best and hope you'll give your marriages a second chance. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Dying of cancer at 36. Golfing solo is the only time I forget about my diagnosis and sadness. Alright, so I have cancer, a bad one. Diagnosed when I was 30, given very little chance of survival for 5 years, and still here 6 years later. I still have cancer too, though docs think that it will eventually kill me, be it in a year, 3, or 5 from now. I already exceeded all the stats and expectations, so anything from here on is a bonus. Not here for pity, really plenty of that to go around. Now, when you're 36 and actively dying while you have a wife and 2 babies, is hardly a fun affair. In fact, it is not so much the fear of dying for me, but rather the fear of how my family will go on without me. Not trying to get all emotional here, as it does weigh on you heavily throughout the day, especially in slow moments when you're not actively running around. My buddy got me into golf some 6 months ago, and I got obsessed. Being a former pro and DI athlete, I was sure it was the challenge and the difficulty of the game that enticed me, but I found myself playing solo a few days ago. Almost nobody on this beautiful course, and I just stood in the fairway, soaking it all in. The full spring trees swaying in the wind, the peaceful lake, no outside noise, no cars, no work action items, no Zoom in Teams. Heck, even the chill ducklings walking across the fairway, not understanding that my drives will likely kill them because I can't aim. It is precisely the serenity that this game offers that is often overlooked. I have an important scan coming up on Monday to show if the cancer has spread, and its inevitability is causing insomnia and consuming most of my thoughts. But for those 3 hours on the course, I play solo and finish 18 in 2.5 hours, usually. Cancer never enters my mind. Not once. I'm 4 days from learning my fate, and my family's, for that matter. But while I'm in that bunker trying not to have a quadruple bogey meltdown, I'm not thinking if there's death looming inside me. It's like death, uncertainty, and fear all get checked at the pro shop, and once you walk onto the first tee, these are all just distant memories happening on the outside. Their noise drowned in the sound of me shanking my drive. The only inevitable downside of playing golf is that it has to end. So when I get home and look at my round stats, I learned that my $15 driver isn't getting the distance I'd want, so I look at new drivers, but then I wonder if I'll live long enough to get to use it properly. Hard to justify buying a Sim 2 big dog if I'll swing it for a month. And just like that, you slip back into the morbidity of it all. No real purpose to this post, but perhaps do consider the privilege we have and the peace we get to enjoy when roaming these fairways. Duffing a chip shot is deflating, but the fact that you get to duff it is priceless. Keep duffing, friends. Update 1. May 10th, 2022. Boys, the cancer is back. Help me plan a killer, no pun intended, 2 weeks of golf. Last week I posted this thread to describe how much golf has helped with finding peace of mind dealing with what appears to be terminal cancer in my 30s. So many of you guys reached out. A couple of Redditors even being so generous as to offer their clubs, which wasn't my intent at all, but your selflessness is truly heartwarming. This community can be brutal if you don't hit your drives 400 yards, but boy, do we come together when things are serious. Well, the scan results came in. 5 new spots of concern are showing. They are spread throughout the body, which is not a great sign. I will be doing some more tests and biopsies, but it seems that heavy chemo is in my cards once again. Deflated the second the first drop of chemo enters my veins. My golf season will likely be over. These therapies are efficient but strong. They take your strength to where you're having a tough time lifting so much as a remote, let alone a driver. Doc hasn't called it yet, but to my cynical self, it looks like this may be the start of the end. Tough pill to swallow with 2 little kids and a wife, man. And with that, I want to hear your guys' thoughts. The chemo likely won't start for several weeks, and I'm toying with the idea of taking 2 weeks off work and just trying to squeeze in as much golf as possible, maybe even 2 rounds a day. Kills me, man. On my drive to Duke Cancer Center, I stopped to play a round near Greensboro and I shot my best score yet. A 96. 5 months of playing. Have mercy. Something's just clicked, and I thought, wow, I'm figuring this out. I even sank a 15-foot putt for par on hole number 18 and almost cried, overcome with emotions of joy and an uncertainty of what the scan is about to reveal. And boy, did it reveal some things. So, on to the advice piece. Do you think it's a good idea to take 2 weeks off and aim to play 28 rounds? Then carpet bomb my body in hope of living to see another season? I'm in Georgia, but maybe up to travel around. I'd have to make arrangements for someone to assist my wife with the kids while I'm off doing selfish bucket list activities. Are there courses that would be a must-play but also accessible in the next several weeks? What would you guys do in my situation? I'm open to any ideas here, fellas. It's tough to think through the logistics of planning golf while I work on the logistics of not dying. And once more, I'm not the one for pity, so please don't feel it for me. I'm 36. But I've lived a good life. I have an amazing wife and 2 beautiful boys. I played high-level basketball, earned a full ride, made it to ESPN back in the day, published a book, flew a plane, survived an unsurvivable cancer for 6 years so far, and I'm working on my PhD, which I hope I will have time to complete. Even if bold and skinny, wouldn't mind a title of doctor on my tombstone. Ha! I like morbid humor. No worries. I enjoyed the company of beautiful women, saw many countries, and had amazing life experiences. I'm not the one to pity, believe me. I appreciate your thoughts as I get ready for this new adventure. And since my name appears in my comment history many times, Update 2, June 2nd, 2022. Chemo starts in 5 days, and I thought I'd provide an update on my golf/cancer trip and how ridiculous this community is. So far, I've had cancer return 5 times. The 5th occurrence being a few weeks ago. Funny enough, my brain never gets used to hearing it's got an expiration date. As soon as those dreaded words land, the first reaction is accompanied by the butterflies stampeding through my belly. Immediately after, in creep the images of my 2 little sons crying at night, calling for Dad and Dada, as chilling inside an ear in the garage next to unused sleeves of Kirkland balls. But then rationality prevails, and after feeling sorry for myself enough, I start thinking about the things I can do. Obviously, my family and the treatment are my first considerations. My wife and boys need to be safe, and I need to get on the most potent poison they've got in hopes of once more eradicating this thing. Then personal desires come into play, which is what brought me to you guys a couple of weeks ago to ask for advice on where to play before my chemotherapy starts again. If I were to speak about every kind message, interaction, or gift I received, we'd be here all day. The selflessness, generosity, and kindness displayed by this community is not only heartwarming and comforting, but it stands in stark contrast to what most folks perceive golf to be about. The community here can scold you if you don't hit your drives 320 plus, but find yourself in a foxhole and everyone shows up. I'd like to emphasize again that while I was blown away and eternally grateful to you guys, my intention was never to benefit from my posts or my illness, yet I can't help but feel that I benefited too much. In addition to hundreds of messages, which I'm still responding to, and displays of generosity. This whole thing snowballed into something I could have never imagined. In short, I ended up being a guest on a golf group therapy podcast where we talked dying and chunking wedge shots. This was followed by an article in Golf Week that spread across the internet. The crown jewel of the entire experience, however, was an invite from an incredibly kind Redditor to play Pinehurst courses. There will be a Pinehurst-produced video, too, featuring your guys' comments, folks. Pinehurst indebted me forever. What started off as a couple of Reddit messages with a Redditor who works there ended up with my family driving up to NC, staying at Pinehurst Resort, and playing the best courses that America has to offer. I was given tee times for number 2, number 3, and number 4. I was given a caddy who caddied for Tiger, Rory, and DJ, amongst many others. To hear him tell stories of these legends who walk the same fairways as I felt very much like I was in a fairy tale. I putted and heard a story about him, sinking a 10-foot putt with one hand and with a hot dog in his mouth. Hell, I had 2 videographers follow me while I played number 4. You know what's crazy? Here I am, 6 months into golf, barely grazing at under 100, and all of a sudden I'm walking Pinehurst courses with drone cameras and Hall of Fame caddies. Yes, I shanked plenty in 4K. The best time I've ever had. Scored 3 pars on number 2. Girls were hitting on me because they thought I was famous with my height plus cameras. They moved on soon after I chunked my 3rd shot. We walked into our room to be welcomed by a handwritten letter and a bag of Pinehurst goodies. At the first tee, the director of golf presented me with an engraved Pinehurst medal and a Pinehurst flag signed by all the staff. I cried on the first tee, boys, and I never cry over dying. Still hit a 190-yard bomb off the tee. Here's the absolute honesty. Walking these magical Pinehurst fairways caused an internal conflict, or war, rather, of emotions. On one hand, it'd be every golfer's dream to have this experience, let alone only 6 months into the game. I remained speechless at the opportunity one was given. On the other hand, such an outpouring of love really sobered me up to how serious my situation is. Christine fairways, Tiger's caddy, and getting par on number 2 only come when attached to a terminal prognosis, yet that wasn't enough to even so much as put a dent into my experience there. I was truly happy. I couldn't play all the courses you guys so generously invited me to, at least not at this time. Heavy chemo starts next Tuesday, and I'll soon be walking around with a pump that will so kindly be pushing poison into me while my doc holds hope that I'll be able to sneak a round or 2 in during this period. My experience with these infusions suggests the opposite. I've played 33 rounds this year so far, and I'm hoping to push that to 50 before the chemo truly kicks in, which is likely in some 3 weeks. There's a Hail Mary clinical trial that we're working on to see if I qualify, but when you start considering Hail Marys, you're likely to soon meet Mary's son. Guys, you all have made this sticky situation infinitely better. Hell, you've poured goo gone with a fire hose. In my 6 years of flirting with the afterlife, I've never felt such warmth from people. For a bunch of strangers spread across the planet to come together and offer help and tee times to someone like me is ridiculous. And to think I kept refusing to get into golf because of its exclusivity and pretentiousness. Thank you. Update 3, July 6, 2022. Checking in from the chemo chair, boys. The poison is flowing freely, but I got my first birdie yesterday, so who really won? I've been getting so many messages checking in, so I figured I owed you an update. Before chemo, 4 weeks ago, you might remember I asked for help choosing courses to play before the poison wipes me. I ended up having the time of my life being hosted at Pinehurst, and they made a video about it, featuring your guys' comments. Don't mind my atrocious-looking chicken wing swing. I shot a 112 on number 2. Best time ever. Also, please forgive the tears in the end. I'm usually your stereotypical man who doesn't cry, no tears, but this got me. Then a fellow Redditor, Justin, invited me to the BMW Pro Am, where I tagged along for a round with him and a few celebrities. An NHL player, a race car driver, and a Golf Channel/SLP podcast host. The NHL player told us a story how he was $1,500,000 plus in a single game. My mans was buying a 2-story single-family home with 2 cars, and he laughs it off before hitting a 300-yard drive. Hey, they were really cool people, and they took me out to the racetrack after, where I was driven fast and furious style. At the first turn, I was afraid, but then I realized I was already on my way to the grave, And how cool would it be to die in a fiery wreck compared to a hospice bed? Also, just an FYI, Nike sent me a pair of Jordans for golf, no biggie. As for the chemo, it wrecked me, boys. The first round ended with puking every 30 minutes for 48 hours straight, biblical, mates. It is so unbelievably counterintuitive to request max dose of chemo and beg them not to lower it when you're barely hanging on by a thread. 2 days after the infusion, I tell myself I'd rather die than do this again, and then 6 days after the infusion, I ask them to keep the same dose, which they describe as never prescribed to a human before, due to my unusual height. They wanted to lower it by 20%, but I don't want 20% less chance of living so that I can feel 20% less suffering. It all blends into a single shade of black past a certain threshold. I feel like a cockroach getting sprayed with Raid. I flip on my back and stop kicking for 7 days, and then flip back over and resume living. This dissolves your entire personality like an Alka-Seltzer. Because treatments were 2 weeks apart, and I only had 2 so far, I managed to squeeze in 2 rounds of golf at the very last night before each chemo infusion. The first round, I puked 3 times but shot a 99, which I'll take. Something got into me over a 5-minute period, and I ped my 7-iron. The first shot went 235 yards, and the second 220 yards. Never again did that happen. Last night's round was a 101 score. Only one vomit situation on the 18th fairway, and I got my first birdie ever. I was overjoyed, fellas, truly. It sucks that the immediate thought after the birdie was, this is kind of poetic as it's likely my last round for months, if not ever. Cancer gets into everything, even the unrelated joy, man. Like shitty glitter, which is all glitter if we're being honest. Don't tell my wife. So that's it, my dudes. As I hit this submit button and you hit your tee shots, a fluid containing platinum is being poured into my veins. Platinum. How ridiculous is it that you have to pump precious metals into yourself to have a minuscule chance of living? I call it the Key Jeweler Special. Yesterday was exactly 6 years since the diagnosis that left me with an 8% chance of living. 5 years, let's get it. In the end, I want to thank this community for such an outpouring of support. You dudes gifted me clubs, checked on me, sent me books. I made 3 friends during these adventures, and they will remain close to me. I'm so thankful to you all. Onwards, Milos. Update 4. December 13th, 2022. Still kicking, boys, though I came pretty close to meeting my maker. I may have almost ended, but my golf plan sure hasn't. My good people, so many messages of concern and questions about how I'm doing. I remain touched by you. I have to admit that the last 4 weeks were a wild ride, and I'm considering optioning my story to Disney because they can't possibly design a roller coaster as crazy as this. I checked into the hospital with nausea, and 2 days later I was having emergency brain radiosurgery. Oopsie. Is in a hospital. His head is held in place by clamps, and he's wearing a nasal cannula. 2 days later I developed a blood clot. 7 days later I developed sepsis, the infection that nearly killed me. As I lay in my room, I ended up having 30 nurses slapping me, asking me what year it was and who the president was. I was only able to answer that Biden was the president, unfortunately, but it surely beats the alternative. At that point, I was back, although they told me that I was very close to checking out to Valhalla. On my way out of the hospital, as I go away present, they told me there are some spots in my lungs that are concerning for cancer spread. I'm now home, and I'm more determined than ever to play golf, or at least accomplish my biggest golf dream. Sadly, I used to have plans to play golf as soon as I can, as much as I can, but the reality is that I'm far worse than I thought I would be at this point, and things seem to be deteriorating. The bright spot is that the doctor told me I will be off chemotherapy for the next 6 months, which will hopefully allow me recovery enough to do what I want to do. Complete my bag with a Scotty putter and go to the St. Andrews Old Course and play around. After that, from a golf perspective, I'm ready to check out and start playing the sky courses. I got to tell you, fellas, I'm kind of heartbroken these days. Nearly dying in the hospital, I realized just how fragile life is, regardless of having been sick for a long time, and it just hit me that I could have gone without saying goodbye to my boys, and all that would be left is them asking, "Where is Dada?" while I'm sitting in some freezer in the basement, and it just breaks my heart. Now that I'm home from the hospital, I'm extremely cold, and I occasionally wear gloves, and my boy comes up to my room in the morning and brings me gloves, and it tears my heart to shreds that he has learned it already. I've made as many videos as I could so far for my boys. I started writing birthday cards for them, and I just don't know what else to do to be remembered because they're so young. And I don't know why I care about being remembered because I don't think it will matter to me when I'm gone. But enough sobbing. I came here to tell you that I'm still alive and I'm still dying. No pun intended, to play golf. And that I will accomplish these 2 dreams of mine. If I get better earlier, I would love to play much more and play with so many of you who have invited me. I once again urge you to go out and play as much as you can and forget about excuses and everyday problems because you have the ability to play and you have the freedom to do so. Update 5. May 2nd, 2023. Live from the chemo chair with an update, boys. It's been rough, my boys, my unlikely community of support. I should be sobbing on one of those confession subs. But this community has carried me through the past year in such a manner that I'm not sure I'd still even be here without you. I wish I could come with better news, but here I am in yet another chemo chair, worse looking than ever. Oopsie. Is in a medical setting, wearing a black baseball cap with a golfing emblem on it and a surgical mask. Since the last time we spoke, I have had 3 additional gamma brain surgeries, which was absolutely brutal. After all this, we were all hopeful of a modicum of success. But one day I was taking a nap and got a message from my doctor that the tumors on my brain were too numerous to count. When you get hit with that, you naturally want to look up and curse out a god you don't even believe in, so we did more brain work and reached some sort of steady state, only for the cancer to spread to my hips, lower back, and ribs. Such a feeling of defeat, receiving this news on the phone as my 1-5-year-old is hugging me by my knees because he's still too little to reach. I tried talking to my 4-year-old about dad having a big ouchie and needing to go up in the sky soon, but he would refuse to understand why he couldn't join me or stay with me there, that he'll never see me again, that I'll never sneak him another Sour Patch Kid and get in trouble with mom. I'm writing this through tears, so forgive my writing, not to mention this isn't my first language. My youngest. I was hoping I'd die before he started recognizing me, but now he runs to me with joy, happily saying, Dada, and all I can see is the heartbreak headed directly his way. So what is there left to do? Nobody can give me a date. I am nearly certain I won't be seeing 2024. I'm currently on new chemo and radiation with little hope of working. I do have a golf and non-golf bucket list that I cut down to the biggest ones, though those 2 now seem unreachable, as it does the impossibility of reaching it. I would have loved to attend a major, and with the Masters behind us, chances of that are significantly diminished since I'm in Georgia. St. Andrew's Old Course. This place always represented an impossibility for me, but I dream of walking up to the 18th green and just kissing it. I feel like I could then look up and tell him to rake me away. That's pretty much it, boys. The thing is, some of these are doable, but with 2 babies at my knees, I can't justify filling my bucket list with money my boys will need for food or school. I did come back because I'm not quitting on golf. This Saturday I'm playing in a scramble tournament. My doc guarantees my rib will shatter during a swing because the cancer has made it too brittle, but, boys, do I even need all my ribs? In hell, I want to keep playing through pain, nausea, and fatigue. Golf has become such an inextricable component of my life that I cannot die without it. Duke Cancer Center invited me to speak and play at their annual cancer tournament. But that's in September, which is kind of too ambitious into the future. So here I am, fellas, naked, skinny, and shattered in front of you. Why, I don't know. You provide me comfort and humor in times when both are scarce, and I come back to you like a fiend. Love you peeps, I truly do. I created a GoFundMe finally, but I can't share it here. If you are interested, please message me. Tons of love and gratitude. Update 6. May 3rd, 2023. Your boy's ass is going to St. Andrews next month, and it is all absolutely thanks to you guys. Speechless. My boys, my people, my family. I can't even begin to describe the previous 24 hours and how much you guys have changed my life. I honest to God 100% did not intend to create a GoFundMe because, to me, 9 times out of 10, it's people taking advantage of willing, kind people like yourselves. Although I didn't plan it, after the assistance of literally hundreds of you, I just felt compelled to create a GoFundMe. Unfortunately, according to this sub's very reasonable Reddit rules, I wasn't able to post the link, but I can tell you that it's been shared over PM hundreds of times, and we have now reached more than 200% of the initial goal of $5,000. If anyone out there is still interested in a link, please PM me. Through this point, it seems like complete absolute greed on my end since you guys went above and beyond what I even visualized. You afforded me to live in the luxury of looking at some new clothes for the trip, which is always exciting to me. You have given me excitement and happiness even before the trip, not to mention during it. Fellas, believe me, there were some gloomy days these days, but today, for the first time in I don't know how long, I woke up with cancer not being the first thing on my mind. You guys were. What does that mean? It means that your boy Milos is going to Scotland to play at the Old Course. This may be the first time in my life that I use 3 S's non-sarcastically. You made this happen, nobody else but you. The best part is that I'm so limited on time, as you can imagine I will be going soon, and I'm looking at June 7th to 12th to be in the area, playing the links courses and especially the Old Course should I be able to get a tea time. This is why I need the assistance of my Scottish fellows who jumped into the thread yesterday with help around logistics and especially getting a tea time at St. Andrews, which I hear is less than easy. For example, Enigma 1984 and Chunder Thompson are from the area and offered help with the logistics, so I come asking if you can help in any way with logistics around scheduling. Even advising on what to do in between the rounds would be amazing, and of course, sharing a pint would be warming my heart to meet such incredible people. Anyone else who has any knowledge of packages for St. Andrews, please let me know. It seems like that's the route to go with getting the tea times done. My wife will also be emailing St. Andrews today. I simply cannot believe that I'm going to St. Andrews, and I will be walking the bridge, and I will be kissing the grass on the 18th. I am in absolute tears writing this because I can't comprehend that this would ever happen to me. And it is exactly you who made it possible. I am intimately, forever and completely indebted to you, that I will never be able to repay it, but I will document every single step of my journey as the least I can do for my people here. Finally, I will be traveling with a Redditor who originally reached out to me to come to play Pinehurst, and since we became friends and this was his dream too, it looks like he will be joining me, which is unbelievable. Of course, I will be taking my boys and my wife as well, and we might even stay in London for a few days after since she has a lot of family there. If any of you have any advice to chip in, I am all ears. In the end, I thank you infinitely, as I remain grateful for however long I live. In hell, if there is an afterlife, I will be grateful there to you and will be boring all the angels up there with the stories of my trip to St. Andrews. Update 7, June 9, 2023. Opie fulfilled his dream of playing at St. Andrews. Image 1. Opie holds a golf club on a large golf course. In the second image, his hand is shown holding a yellow golf ball that says, Milos and our SL Golf We Here 2023. Final update, January 20th, 2024. It is with our deepest sympathy that we announce the death of you/Anas Milos Bajic, author of popular stories such as, I am a chronological man crying tears of horror right now, or the story of Her Holding an Orange, and I was a part of Queen's Guard in England. One of the rare jobs where you aren't allowed to move no matter what stands in front of you, as well as, I was an air traffic controller at Atlantic Municipal Airport, Iowa, for 27 years. My first year at the job, I unwillingly went from a firm atheist to a believer. You/Anas was a force to be reckoned with in the world of short horror stories. As some of you may remember, you/Anas announced his battle with cancer several years ago. He battled long and hard but ultimately succumbed to the disease last night. We would like to send our love and prayers to his family, friends, and anyone who loved him. Our love and prayers also go out to the r/golf community, which he frequented often as a beloved member of the community. You can find a heartwarming tribute to him here. Rest in peace, Milos. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My wife of 6 years accuses me of having an affair with my young sister-in-law and stops talking to me. But when I find the real truth, I am furious. I, 34M, have been married to my wife, Amelia, 32F, for 6 years now. Our story began in college during our sophomore year. I was a business major and she was studying computer science. We met in an elective course on environmental sustainability where we were paired for a group project. I was immediately struck by her intelligence and wit. Amelia had this way of breaking down complex problems that made everything seem so clear and simple. Our first date was at a small coffee shop near campus. We talked for hours about our dreams, our families, and our favorite books. I remember thinking how easy it was to talk to her, how time seemed to fly by when we were together. We started dating officially a few weeks later. Throughout college, we supported each other's goals. Amelia helped me improve my grades in math-related subjects, while I helped her come out of her shell and make more friends. We were a team, balancing each other out perfectly. We had our share of arguments and disagreements, but we always managed to work through them. After graduation, we both landed jobs in the same city. I joined a marketing firm, while Amelia secured a position at a tech startup. We lived separately at first, wanting to establish our careers before taking the next step. Those 2 years of dating post-college only strengthened our relationship. We learned to navigate the challenges of adult life together, from budgeting to dealing with difficult coworkers. I proposed on our 4-year anniversary. I had planned an elaborate surprise, but in true Amelia fashion, she figured it out halfway through. She said yes before I could even get down on one knee. Our wedding was a small, intimate affair with close friends and family. Amelia's younger sister, Emily, 28F, was her maid of honor. The first few years of our marriage were blissful. We bought a small house, adopted a cat named Pixel, and settled into a comfortable routine. Amelia's career took off, and she was quickly climbing the corporate ladder. I was doing well too, but not at the same pace as Amelia. I always admired her drive and ambition. About a week ago, Emily moved to our city after getting a job here. Since she hadn't found an apartment yet, we offered to let her stay with us temporarily. Emily's mom, Sandra, also came along to help her settle in. I was excited to have Emily stay with us. She and I had always gotten along well, sharing a similar sense of humor and love for board games. First, everything seemed fine. Amelia took a few days off work to help Emily settle in and start her apartment search. However, as the days passed, Amelia became increasingly busy with work. She had a big project coming up, and her team was understaffed. This meant she was putting in extra hours, often working late into the night. With Amelia busy, I took over helping Emily. We spent time looking at apartments online, visiting potential places, and discussing the pros and cons of different neighborhoods. I also showed her around the city, pointing out good restaurants, grocery stores, and other useful spots. Emily was grateful for the help, often expressing how much easier I was making her transition. One evening, about a week into Emily's stay, Amelia came home late to find Emily and me laughing over a game of Scrabble. She seemed a bit off, but when I asked if everything was okay, she just said she was tired and went to bed. I didn't think much of it at the time. As days went by, I started noticing changes in Amelia's behavior. She became more distant and withdrawn. Even when she was home, she rarely left her workroom. Our conversations became shorter and less frequent. I tried to engage her, asking about her day or if she wanted to join us for dinner, but she often declined, citing work commitments. After about 2 weeks, Emily found a place nearby and moved out. However, she still visited us frequently, usually in the evenings or on weekends. She'd come over for dinner or to hang out, which I thought was normal for family living close by. Sometimes, when Amelia was working late, Emily and I would watch movies or play games to pass the time. One Saturday, about a month after Emily had moved to her new place, I suggested we all go out for dinner to celebrate her new job and apartment. Amelia agreed but seemed reluctant. At the restaurant, the conversation was artificial and awkward. Emily tried to engage Amelia, asking about her work and sharing funny stories from her new job, but Amelia's responses were short and disinterested. I tried to lighten the mood, but nothing seemed to work. We left the restaurant early, with Amelia claiming she had a headache. The next day, I decided it was time to talk to Amelia about what was going on. I walked into her workroom while she was on the phone. When she saw me, she quickly ended the call and asked what I wanted. I tried to bring up how I felt she had been distant lately and asked if everything was okay. To my shock, Amelia exploded. She accused me of having an affair with Emily. I was completely blindsided by this accusation. I told her that I only saw Emily as a sister and that nothing inappropriate had happened between us. I tried to explain that I was just being helpful and welcoming to family, but Amelia wouldn't listen. She brought up how much time I'd spent with Emily, how often Emily visited, and how I seemed happier around her sister than with her. She mentioned the Scrabble night, the dinners, the movie nights. She even brought up times I hadn't thought twice about, like when Emily and I went grocery shopping together, or when I helped her assemble furniture in her new apartment. I was stunned. I realized my actions could be interpreted this way. I tried to reassure Amelia that my feelings for her hadn't changed and that I was just trying to be a good brother-in-law. I reminded her of our history, our love, our life together. But Amelia was too upset to listen. After this argument, Amelia and I started sleeping in separate rooms. The tension in the house was intense. I felt lost and confused, not understanding how things had escalated so quickly. I tried to give Amelia space while also making it clear that I was there when she was ready to talk. A few days later, I overheard Amelia on the phone with her mother. From the conversation, I realized that Sandra had been feeding these ideas to Amelia. She had apparently been telling Amelia that my behavior was suspicious and that she should be wary of my relationship with Emily. Sandra had noticed how much time Emily and I spent together during her visit and had jumped to conclusions. I was angry when I found this out. I felt that my mother-in-law had overstepped and caused unnecessary drama in our marriage. However, by the time I learned this, she had already gone back to her home in another state. I tried to talk to Amelia again, explaining what I had overheard and reassuring her that her mother's suspicions were unfounded. But Amelia was still upset and unwilling to listen. She said she needed time to think and process everything. In an attempt to prove my innocence, I showed Amelia my phone and email, offering complete transparency. I even suggested she talk to Emily directly to clear up any misunderstandings. But Amelia refused, saying she couldn't trust either of us. Now I've reduced contact with Emily, only responding to necessary messages about family matters. Emily is aware that something is wrong, but I haven't shared the details with her to avoid making the situation more complicated. She's texted a few times asking if everything is okay, but I've kept my responses vague. Now I'm at a loss. I feel like I've done nothing wrong, but my marriage is suffering. I was just trying to be helpful and welcoming to my sister-in-law, and now I'm being accused of infidelity. I love Amelia and have never even thought about being unfaithful to her. I'm hurt that Amelia could think I would cheat on her, especially with her sister. I'm also frustrated that she seems to trust her mother's speculation over my word and our 6 years of marriage. At the same time, I'm trying to understand her perspective and how my actions might have appeared to her. I've suggested couples counseling, but Amelia hasn't given me an answer yet. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to save our marriage, but I also feel that I shouldn't have to apologize for being kind to family. Looking back, I wonder if I should have been more aware of how my actions might be perceived. Should I have involved Amelia more in Emily's settling-in process? Was I too naive in thinking that spending time with my sister-in-law was completely innocent? I've started to question every interaction I had with Emily. Was I too friendly? Did I cross a line without realizing it? But then I remind myself that I never had any romantic feelings for Emily. She's family, and I treated her as such. The hardest part is seeing how this has affected Amelia. The strong, confident woman I married now seems insecure and vulnerable. I hate that my actions, however innocent, have caused her pain. I want to fix this, but I don't know how when she won't even talk to me. I've thought about reaching out to Sandra to confront her about the role she played in this mess, but I worry that might only make things worse. I don't want to create more division in the family. For now, I'm trying to give Amelia the space she asked for while also showing her that I'm committed to our marriage. I leave notes for her, telling her I love her and that I'm here when she's ready to talk. I'm taking care of all the household chores, trying to alleviate any stress I can. But as days turn into weeks, I'm starting to lose hope. Will Amelia ever trust me again? Can our marriage survive this? I love her more than anything, and the thought of losing her over a misunderstanding is tearing me apart. Should I have been more aware of how my actions might be perceived? Should I have involved Amelia more in Emily's settling-in process? Or am I right to feel that I've been unfairly accused based on unfounded suspicions? How do I fix this and save my marriage? Update. It's been 3 months since my last post, and a lot has happened. I never expected things to turn out this way, but life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. After my initial post, things with Amelia remained tense. We were still living in the same house but barely speaking to each other. I continued to sleep in the guest room, and our interactions were limited to necessary household matters. I tried several times to initiate a conversation about our issues, but Amelia always shut me down, saying she wasn't ready to talk. A month ago, I ran into Linda, Amelia's close friend and colleague, at a local coffee shop. Linda and I had always been on good terms, and she knew about the issues Amelia and I were having. She asked how things were going, and I gave her a brief update, expressing my frustration at the lack of communication from Amelia. Linda looked uncomfortable and asked if we could sit down. I could tell something was bothering her. After a moment of hesitation, she dropped a bombshell that turned my world upside down. Linda revealed that Amelia had been having an affair with her senior manager, David, for over a year. I was stunned. Linda explained that she had known about it for a while but had been sworn to secrecy by Amelia. However, she couldn't keep it to herself any longer, especially seeing how much I was suffering from Amelia's false accusations. According to Linda, Amelia had been looking for a way out of our marriage for months. She had grown closer to David and wanted to be with him, but she didn't want to be the one to end our marriage. When Emily came to stay with us, Amelia saw an opportunity. She deliberately distanced herself, hoping I would grow closer to Emily. She wanted to create a situation where she could accuse me of infidelity, giving her an excuse to end our marriage while painting herself as the victim. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman I had loved and trusted for years had not only been unfaithful, but had also tried to manipulate me into taking the blame for our failing marriage. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and deep sadness. Linda went on to reveal more shocking details. Amelia and David had been planning their future together. They were waiting for Amelia to finalize our divorce before making their relationship public. David was in the process of divorcing his wife as well. I thanked Linda for her honesty and left the coffee shop in a daze. I spent the next few days processing this information, trying to make sense of it all. I looked back at our relationship, wondering how I could have missed the signs. Had I been so blind? Or was Amelia just that good at hiding her infidelity? After careful consideration, I decided to confront Amelia. I waited until she came home from work one evening and asked her to sit down for a talk. I calmly told her everything I had learned from Linda. I watched as the color drained from her face, her expression changing from shock to guilt to anger. At first, Amelia tried to deny everything, accusing Linda of lying. But as I shared more details that only someone close to her would know, she realized she couldn't keep up the charade. Finally, she broke down and admitted to the affair. Amelia confessed that she had fallen out of love with me over time and had grown closer to David. She said she felt guilty about the affair but couldn't bring herself to end it. She admitted to deliberately creating distance between us when Emily came to stay, hoping to find a way out of our marriage without being the one to end it. I asked her why she didn't just tell me she wanted a divorce instead of trying to manipulate the situation. She said she was afraid of being seen as the bad guy, of disappointing her family and friends. She thought it would be easier if I was the one at fault. I was hurt, angry, and disappointed. I told Amelia that her actions were cowardly and selfish. I said that while our marriage might have had its problems, I had always been faithful and honest with her. I deserved better than to be manipulated and falsely accused. Amelia broke down in tears, apologizing profusely. She begged for forgiveness, saying she had made a terrible mistake. She even suggested we try couples counseling to work things out. But for me, the trust was irreparably broken. I told her I needed time to think and left the house for a few days, staying with a friend. During this time, I did a lot of soul searching. I realized that even if I could forgive Amelia, I could never trust her again. The manipulation and lies were too much to overcome. I decided that ending our marriage was the best course of action for both of us. When I returned home, I told Amelia my decision. She seemed resigned, as if she had expected this outcome. We agreed to file for divorce and to try to keep things as amicable as possible. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I contacted a divorce lawyer and started the process of filing for divorce. I also reached out to Emily and explained the situation to her. She was shocked and angry on my behalf, apologizing for her unwitting role in Amelia's plan. I assured her that she had nothing to apologize for and that I valued her as family. As news of our impending divorce spread, I was surprised by the reactions of our friends and family. Many of them, it turned out, had suspected something was going on with Amelia but hadn't wanted to get involved. Some apologized for not speaking up sooner. Amelia's parents were particularly upset when they learned the truth. They called me to apologize for their earlier suspicions and to express their disappointment in Amelia's actions. It was a difficult conversation, but I appreciated their honesty and support. As we worked through the divorce proceedings, more surprises came to light. I discovered that Amelia had been secretly transferring money from our joint account to a private account for months. She had also been making large purchases that she had hidden from me. These discoveries made me even more certain that I was making the right decision in ending our marriage. Throughout this process, I found unexpected support from Linda. She felt guilty for keeping Amelia's secret for so long and wanted to make amends. We started spending more time together, initially just talking about the situation with Amelia, but gradually our conversations expanded to other topics. I found myself looking forward to our chats and appreciating her kind and honest nature. About 2 months into the divorce process, another twist occurred. David's wife found out about his affair with Amelia and confronted him. Unlike me, she was willing to give their marriage another chance. David, faced with the reality of losing his family, broke things off with Amelia. Amelia was devastated. She came to me crying and apologizing, saying she had made a huge mistake and wanted to call off the divorce. She said she realized now that what she had with David wasn't real love and that she wanted to work things out with me. But for me, it was too late. The trust was gone, and I couldn't go back to a relationship built on lies and manipulation. I told Amelia that while I forgave her, I couldn't forget what she had done. We needed to move forward with the divorce. As I write this update, the divorce is nearly finalized. Amelia and I have divided our assets and are preparing to go our separate ways. It's been a difficult and painful process, but I feel like I'm finally starting to heal. Throughout all of this, my friendship with Linda has continued to grow. We've been taking things slow, both aware of the complicated circumstances, but I find myself developing feelings for her. She's been a rock of support through this challenging time, and I appreciate her honesty and kindness. I've also reconnected with Emily. We've talked through everything that happened, and our relationship as in-laws has actually grown stronger. She's been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal. Looking back at my original post, I realize now that I was never at fault in this situation. I was simply a trusting husband who was manipulated by someone I loved. While the pain of betrayal still lingers, I'm hopeful for the future. I've learned valuable lessons about trust, communication, and the importance of being true to oneself. To those who offered advice on my original post, thank you. Your perspectives helped me navigate this difficult situation. And to anyone going through something similar, remember that you deserve honesty and respect in your relationships. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and seek the truth, even when it's painful. As I close this chapter of my life, I'm looking forward to what the future holds. It may not be the future I had once envisioned, but I'm determined to make it a good one, filled with honesty, trust, and genuine love. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I crushed my ex-wife's hopes after she cheated on me. Bit of background. I'm 36 as of now. The characters' names have been altered a bit. Rebecca, my ex-wife, is now 34. James is my college buddy and the guy Rebecca cheated on me with. Saladin is my other guy friend, Lisa's cousin. Rebecca and I were what you call college sweethearts. We survived college and the hardships of life, got married in our early 20s. I was 25, she was 23. Ever since we got married, things were rocky. Not from the start, but situation-wise. I was in medical school while she was an accounting major. There were things that were okay with me but not with her. Despite being married, she acted like she was a free bird. It's a good thing, but there was marital neglect from her side. In 2016, she joined James's company as an accountant because it paid well. I was happy because, hey, he's a buddy of mine, Slowly, she started to complain about things that were in place. She didn't like where we lived. She had problems with everything I did. She didn't like the food she used to. I'm a great cook, and she loved my food. Our fights intensified to the point where she would call me names. Good for nothing. She earned more than me. Coming to this part later on, a drastic turn was here. Rebecca and James were hanging out with our set of mutual friends. I got word of it and it seemed off. I confronted both of them, to which they both said it was a sudden plan, and I was out of town coincidentally. It happened on the same day I was out of the city. They might have planned it beforehand, which I'm not sure of. 2017, the year my marriage blew up. So I was sure there was something because my bedroom became a dead one. I was increasingly paranoid, and whenever I tried to address things, I was turned down. Now, I'm not a saint. I constantly yelled at her to tell me what was going on because there was just something off. Your favorite person rarely talks or does stuff with you, and they claim it's nothing. Does this sound okay? It was also the year we were at our peak financially because our debts were paid off. My friends and I decided to open up a medical shop that provided medicine as a side venture. One of the friends was Saladin. He proposed that we celebrate at a pub. When we go there, I notice a girl that looks exactly like Rebecca. She was dancing with another man, and it was quite dark. I get a closer look. Lo and behold, it's Rebecca and James dancing hand in hand. I wasn't much bothered about it because, hey, they're friends. I was here with my colleagues and she was there with hers. But it was bothering me. I decided to send her a text asking where she was. She's usually on her way home at this time. She told me she was already at home. Now that was a red flag. I told her to stop lying because she wasn't. I could clearly see her. She was getting paranoid and told me she was on her way. She left the pub afterward. That night I asked her about James. The look she gave me was as if she saw a ghost because she was not expecting that question. That look was what told me something was definitely up. If you ask your significant other about a friend, they should act normally, but the way she acted was abnormal. That night itself, I snooped her phone. Curiosity was killing me. The password was changed, so I couldn't see the phone. The next day, I saw her password and snooped it. There were hundreds of thousands of texts right there. Countless nudes calling him daddy, degrading comments. My wife and I made a vow to each other that if there was ever anything we needed to explore, we would be transparent to each other. She broke that vow too. She confided in him how much thrilled she felt that night at the pub. I went through everything. What hurt the most was she herself told me if one of us ever got bored of the other or needed to spice things up, we would let each other know. She destroyed everything. I couldn't look at her the way I used to anymore. I cried that night and confronted her stupidly without any evidence. The next morning, she yelled at me and stormed out after telling me I was abusive and insane. She told all our friends that I was abusive. That afternoon, they created a messenger group where everyone ganged up to troll me. When she came home that night, she told me she was in love with James and wants a divorce. I told her to talk first, but it turned into her berating me. I yelled at her and she called the cops. I was asked to spend the night elsewhere. I went to my sister's, and when I returned the next morning, James's car was there. He spent the night here. There was nothing needed to explain. He was doing it on purpose. Hell, she was doing it on purpose. I went to see a lawyer as we did not have a prenup. She already filed a complaint about me being abusive. It didn't look good for me. Not once did she try to apologize. Not once did she try to make amends. Our country's law doesn't count infidelity as a fault, so even with that, she's entitled to half of my everything, but her complaint can sew me up. A few days after that, while I was still living with my sister, I tried contacting Rebecca, but she won't reply to me. Rebecca hit me up telling me we should get divorced. That's it. 12 years of relationship, 4 years of marriage, and she ends it with a text. I was convinced that James was taking my place. She handed me the divorce papers. Everyone from our friend circle was convinced that I was an abuser and James was her savior. She did the right thing to cheat on me. We were officially divorced during the start of 2018. She was already dating James openly during our divorce. He was her life. I lost my job, my house, my reputation in her little affair. I had to change the city to move someplace else to restart again. Saladin helped me massively in that fresh start. He got me a decent paying job that was nowhere like my previous one, but it was better than the rest. We became close buddies. While I was working to earn back what I had, dating life was over for me. I just couldn't trust anyone. It was a complete NC between me and Rebecca. Last I heard, she moved in with James. They were doing great. Revenge part. End of 2020, my life was actually blowing up. COVID helped our cause with broken backs but filled our pockets. Our pharmacy venture turned huge, so I was able to make much money. I met a friend of mine from whom I got a tip that James and Reb were done. James cheated on her and left her, but Reb had a child with James. He was absent since birth, so he did not sign the birth certificate, so Reb is raising that child as a single parent. She tried dating, but she was not over me or James. The audacity. Part of me was happy with it, but gosh, I really missed her. I sent her an email asking how she was doing. She wasn't expecting to hear from me. We exchanged emails and reconnected. Our first meet was in 2021 after several years. She looked bad. She gained weight, lost the charm, and looked utterly exhausted all the time. Frankly, just her look made my blood boil and triggered me, but I also want to take my revenge on her. Life had already done that on my part, but I'm an a-hole. I wasn't done with her. She told me about James and reopened the earlier wounds. I got my closure, which made me feel a bit better, I guess. She said she was sorry. She wasn't thinking straight. What she was doing. James poisoned her mind against me. I told her I will forgive her if she comes clean to everyone and clears my name out. She did that, losing a lot of friends, but she deserved that. My name was clean. She wanted us to date again. Clear words made me raise that bastard James's child. I told her I would agree to it, but we needed to date and marry first. Only then will I legally adopt her child. That little guy is adorable, and I had taken a liking to him. Here is the truth. I was already seeing someone. Pretty safe to say I was cheating on that woman with Reb. She was a client of mine from a different country. We were in an LDR. Reb and I were living in different cities, so I never moved in with her, but I played it well by saying I need to travel for business. So I was only getting Rebecca's hopes up to crush her like she crushed me. We were getting intimate, but condoms were used. Rebecca felt she found love again. I pushed her to therapy to get her to be normal again. Everyone was commenting how she was getting happier with me. She would praise me and then say sorry, do little things for me that she used to when she was married to me. Trust me when I say I had a lot of emotions attached to this woman. I considered my revenge. If it was a good thing to break her heart, she might be traumatized for a lifetime, but she did not think of my heart and we were married. Why should I think of hers? Her birthday was coming up last year. October. Lockdown was eased up, and my someone, it's Lisa, was in my city for the birthday gift. I grabbed Rebecca for ring shopping. She picked out her favorite ring that I got. It was wrapped. She was elated because of that. That night, she came up to me crying that she was sorry for hurting me. She looked genuinely remorseful, but I had no feelings for her except indifference. Lisa was Saladin's cousin. I already told her everything beforehand. She was against my revenge idea, but I managed to convince her somehow. She was uncomfortable with it but understood that I needed to go through it. On Rebecca's birthday, I drove her to our favorite spot when we were married. It's a nature's place. Lisa was already waiting there. I introduced Lisa to Rebecca. That Lisa's my girlfriend. Rebecca went white and asked me what she means. What is she? Then I introduced her to Lisa as Rebecca, my ex-wife and FWB. There and then, I proposed to Lisa with that ring. Rebecca went mad and started yelling, to which I replied, how the F can she expect us to work out when she nuked us? I'm never dating a dirtbag like her again. She asked me again and again if we meant nothing. I told her, nope. Sleeping with her was compensation for the pain I got. I got her to clear out the pain she put me through. Lisa was holding me back. She saw Rebecca was hurting. I told Rebecca that she needs to leave. She told everyone that I cheated and I was an a-hole. This time I took it as a pride. Everyone saw the dirtbag she was. She cheated on me and made me pay a high price for a falsified abuse. Now she wants me to raise her kid and date her. The last we connected was in December of last year. She wrote me a letter about how much sorry she is because she can't imagine putting me through the pain that she already put me through. She hoped I live a better life. Last I heard, she was completely uninterested in dating. As of me, I and Lisa stopped dating. There were differences between us. I'd like to add an edit. People who are saying I'm worse than my ex, can you please, at least for the love of God, point out how am I worse than her? She cheated. I loved her, and she cheated on me. She cost me my home, my job, my image, my reputation, my friends. I was an abuser to everyone. I gave her a taste of her own medicine. Yes, by hurting someone else. Now I'm worse than her? I don't want judgment. This is nuclear revenge, and I'm sharing my revenge story. I may emotionally scar her, but that's what she did to me. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.